Ready? We'll do Brian.
I can make a motion to open the meeting.
No, yeah, you want to call over? Or you
Yeah,
want-
call to order.
Yeah. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order for the Board of Supervisors for Solterra Resort Community Development District. Today is April 3rd, approximately 10:06 a.m. and take roll call, members of the board. We have Supervisor Mertz,
Here.
Supervisor Heim,
Here.
Supervisor Boissard,
Present.
Supervisor Nealon,
Here.
and Supervisor Winker. Members of your staff, you have Joe Bowling with the Artemis team, Brian Mendez, your district manager for CDD. Members of the Yellowstone team for landscape, Greg Woodcock, the district engineer on the call. We have Megan and Savannah representing our legal counsel today,
Here.
and Meredith's on the line. Hey Meredith.
Hello, Meredith. Meredith. Cigarettes?
And members of
Good
the audience.
morning. I can hear you. Yes, good morning.
All right, gonna go ahead and open up for public comments. I do believe we have a email from Jeff Boyle, wanted us to read something into the record.
Right, I'll be, this was sent to me by Jeff Boyle. He is unable to be at this meeting, but he asked me to read it for him. He had three main questions, comments, that he wanted to run through. Number one, are there any plans to create a concrete walkway between Oak Moss Loop and Solterra Boulevard, where there's currently the gravel there, the gravel walkway? Does the wall at the Springs Gate fall under the HOA or the CDD? He noticed that it had been cleared. And then he was glad that the playground is cleared, and he was wondering what's the plan for what will go there in the future.
Perfect, and we'll be talking about all of those things.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, wonderful. Any other public comments at this time? Anybody on the call? Give you guys a second to turn off your mutes. All right. So before we jump into pool services, it's going to be a little bit of a lengthy conversation. We would like to do a motion to move some agenda items, putting your aquatic maintenance up first. Take a motion when ready. A motion from Supervisor Winker, seconded by Supervisor Heim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, Matt, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into your agenda items. Or you'll look on tab 1 through 3. General updates first.
Yep, the drought is making for some interesting conditions. I've been saying for a couple of months, the higher times are dry or fairly dry. And this is just letting more room available for grasses to grow on it. It's like little aquatic grasses and like terrestrial weeds that typically pop up anywhere it's dry. Now that it's hot, they basically open up. I've had a couple of our guys say this is the strongest start to a growing season they've ever seen. So they're just go nonstop. I sent a guy out here on the next visit on Tuesday to just start hitting these grasses. Real strong mix, and okay, just take the whole day, spray the grasses. We can worry about, the rest of the full surface, starting in April, which will be back Wednesday, that all done. So I really want to stay ahead of this. And some of those grasses, if they get into water, they're going to be a huge problem. I just don't want that to happen. I'm just trying to stay on top of it. Some of the areas we've hit before with the more selective herbicides, they are starting to clear out. On zero, on the front by 7-Eleven, I'm sleeping a little bit better. Probably hit it one more time next week. It should start clearing right up. And for what the guys are saying, the trash has gotten better. Did you approve that water service?
We did, the porter services, yeah.
It is seriously making a difference. There was a good calls, saving my guys a lot of time.
Nice.
90 pounds of trash everywhere.
Yeah, I think a lot of the trash probably got dumped in more common areas and then just got blown into the
And
pipes.
that's just what happens. So now that, Ben and us are gonna be more in tandem, we can focus more on actually on spraying the primary focus of it. And yes, we're gonna be killing this stuff before it gets underwater. Now, this rest grass will drown naturally, but I'm just gonna stick with that. So I make sure it goes through it. It'll start to dry not to hay, sand.
Very cool.
Okay.
All right, and then we're gonna get into some of your consideration items here. First up on the agenda is the pond fish stocking. Board members tab 2. You have the bluegill stocking and the mosquito fish. These are for ponds 5, 6, and 9. 19, correct, sorry, thank you for that. And
Water level currently sufficient in those ponds?
Yes. Yeah, these are some of the largest ponds you have, so they're. I'm gonna say that purpose. They'll happen with very low chance they're gonna dry up, especially now because it is gonna start raining here more frequently, hopefully. So hopefully.
Pond 6 is the one back by the town on the right.
No, pond 6 is your largest and most central pond. It's by, sorry, I don't know the street name. It's like right in the middle of the community.
That's a lively. Right there. Stop. 6 feet and
We go. The cul-de-sac of Oak Grade Corn is behind that.
Okay,
Yeah, the real big one.
okay, that goes between there and that other one,
Yes.
then backs up to the other neighborhood.
Yeah, that's. And that one I have a little post on here because the bluegill shellcracker mix, that will, it's just kind of a natural way to help keep midflies away. Not right, but they eat the larvae in the water. So I want to put them through these larger, more spread out ponds to kind of the whole community, because they will over time spread out the ponds through. Sometimes the ponds are connected to the ground, they spread through birds, storms, pick them up, you try to just at least kind of see them and.
Okay, I didn't even occur to me that that could even happen, but
Are these the recommended amounts of the number of fish that you think should be in there?
Yeah.
Like, could it be half?
From,
We need twice as many?
now, from our fish providers, they recommend, at least for the bluegill, they say between 250 and 500 per acre, so I went 50, just like in lines. So, the right around the middle, same thing for the Ganesha, I don't remember the figure this. Center.
Got it. Next question, is there any risk of things not working out for the fish in the pond at some point? Like if the drought gets worse or anything else, like,
It's not super likely, I mean, part of what they built into those numbers recommended is that once we put them in the water, some of them aren't going to die. But I'm always hearing when our guys put the fish in, and every one of these they've done, I think like 99% of them survive, like at least a trip.
Sure, okay, yeah.
And of course, there's gonna be like birds stuff that eat them, but I don't see these ponds completely drying up or being low enough to not have the fish in.
and so to rewind for a few months ago, when we first started talking about this is part of the plan to mitigate some of the algae issues as well.
That would be like plantains, which are the next section.
Okay,
that's,
so the benefit of putting the fish in, remind me,
Is for midge flies and mosquitoes to help mitigate that.
okay.
Naturally, without having to use that surfactant.
Okay, so then do we need the mosquito fish if we put all these bluegills in, because they look like they're really pricey.
The mosquito fish, trying to, one of them is based on how the larvae live in the water. I believe it's the mosquito fish, which is based on how their head is shaped, they're more adapted to eat the larvae that are on the top of the surface, but their mouths are kind of pointing upwards, and bluegill eat the midge larvae that live with their farther down.
Are there any specific conditions when you guys are putting this fish in the pond?
Condition, how the fish guys usually do it is they bring them in bags. We'll usually leave them in there for a couple of minutes, just so they can acclimate to temperature and kind of get used to it, and then we'll slowly release them over the course of.
It's nice and blood fish. Okay. So I guess I'm questioning, do we need the mosquito fish and the bluegills?
It's really just what you have, the larger issue is midge flies, mosquitoes, because they kind of each handle one.
well, I know we've always been, price sensitive with the stuff that we do and we'll try to be frugal and, with the ponds. If we were to do, say, half the amount of those, would that not solve the problem? Would it Would the fish eventually get to those numbers? We have to
Probably
wait.
not, that's why I wanted to
Okay,
keep it kind of, right in the middle of what is recommended, because I don't like to go too low and too high. Because they will, they're gonna, once they mature, they'll create the spread.
So the bluegills are for the midge flies and the mosquitoes, so would it be unreasonable just to stop the bluegills and see if the problem is, I don't really have a problem on. But I don't know that it's like over near Bobby's house and see if we get some mosquito control, because I have noticed that last year, for the first time, Cole County wasn't coming in and doing some mosquito spraying throughout the resort, so I don't know. And last summer was the first time I noticed that.
Yeah, you also don't have to approve something. You wanted to see what the option would look
Yeah.
like, cost value. You can totally table this for some future consideration.
Okay,
I don't know if a little additional, now that it's getting extra up, because there's more mosquitoes, but I mean, I don't know if it's about that we got to spend $6,000 to eradicate mosquitoes.
yeah, I'm supportive, I think, of the bluegill proposal, and I'm excited about the plants, but I don't know how to go about the $7,000 for the mosquito fish.
Yeah, let's continue to the plants then. We'll come back to the fish. So let's look at tabs 3. You have ponds 5, 13, and 27 for consideration. Matt, take it away.
Yeah, then, yeah, this is what's part of the nutrient mitigation and to help with algae. We're doing one of these at another community called Claremont, and what they're more interested in is the insects it draws in, which they can bring in pollinators, dragonflies, which will also naturally help the mosquitoes and stuff. And on top of aesthetics and the nutrient part. On each of the proposals, the one on the left, the white flowers is arrowhead, and the right front wall is pretty. Well, what we'll do is just around the perimeters of each of these ponds, just little clusters, 20 plants each, one head plant, one head different type, one first type, second type, just all around, and those will just naturally start to propagate over time. And bees, even after the drought, all we had, I've seen bees come back harder than pretty much any other plants that. So, really,
Good stuff.
Do these attract butterflies at all?
I suppose they could. No reason they should, because again, butterflies are also pollinators and they have flowers on them, so it's possible.
Okay. Okay.
Anything sticking out? What are you thinking?
one last question. If we were not to move forward with this, what would be the consequences to the community? More bugs, more mosquitoes, and
That's really, I can't say how many mosquitoes are gonna
okay.
pop up. These are just ways to cut that back for just a one-time thing. Again, put plants in, put fish in, and they just start to do their stuff.
I think it's how big did those bluegills get? About this big?
The bluegills, when they're fully grown. 4 or 5 inches.
About maybe, so this isn't something that's gonna potentially entice people to fish when they shouldn't be fishing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
6 pounds.
I know.
So I think that the whole point of this, it's not just an exercise and, having to spend our money. I think it's also, there are real effects of this that have to do with the value of homes, the value of the perceived value of our community. Right now, we have this very unattractive look in our ponds. And this is a way of beautifying it. It's not as expensive as a lot of the other options that we've looked at. And also algae is a problem. It's also a health problem as well as a visual. So all of these things are just because they're behind our houses. And I know that, our primary concern is safety and the look of the community as you drive in. So that's always the number one thing, the most visible thing. But these ponds that are behind the houses, they also affect our home values. they affect the lifestyle of the home, and they also affect the perception of the home by our guests. And so that's it. You want to sit out in your back patio, you want to see something, these are beautiful plants that we've got here. And, you know, mosquitoes, now we all have cages too, because we all have holes and all of that, but protect us from the mosquitoes somewhat.
Can I ask this, Karen, you oversee the liaison for the grounds and ask maybe, what's your recommendation on the fish? What would you recommend
So
to the board?
I agree with Debbie. I think that we could phase the whole fish thing in and, you know, just see how it works. See how it does. If we're gonna have a drought, right, we may have less of a mosquito issue than we've had in the past. So maybe just because of the natural El Nino environment that we're in. You know, apparently they're gonna get hurricanes over in California again. Yeah. But it should be pretty mild here is what I'm hearing.
So
You never know.
your recommendation would be to hold on the fish till maybe a later date and just see.
Or maybe go halvesies on the fish, you know, maybe like what you were saying, just go with the gills and just kind of phase it in. I don't know that I would cut it entirely,
Okay.
because by the time we realize it's a problem, it could be too late.
Okay, so halfsies on the bluegill, full on the bluegill or halfsies? Okay.
Halvesies,
And then for the flowers, what's your recommendations on that?
I would go full board on that.
I'm fully supportive of the flowers for algae control, but it's also gonna be aesthetic and, you know, like the pond behind Louise's house, like those houses that they said, that pond sells those houses. And so we have an opportunity to, you know, bring that to some of the other ponds in the community. And I think if the ponds are healthy and they're beautiful, then that'll bring in wildlife. You know, gators may come with that, but you know, a lot of those homes that back up to that pond, I mean, people rent those houses because they want us to watch gators and they want to watch the birds and.
Sounds good. Bobby, Sam, you guys want to weigh in at all on?
So I have one more question. So if we do the bluegills in those 3 ponds, you did say that there's the potential for them to be spread into other ponds.
That's
by, you know, drainage things and birds and things. Is that something that you can report back to us under, if your team observes the presence of fish in other ponds?
If they start seeing, if I ask them like, hey, let's keep an eye on this, you know, this should be maybe like a year or so.
Yeah.
Sure. I can ask them, yeah, hey, if you start seeing these bluegill in new ponds, let me know.
Popping up in other areas and then report back and just so that we have an idea.
So,
Do you know what type of fish those are currently in pond 6? It seems like it's something small. I don't know if they're just like the fish.
I can't tell, I'm not out there.
Alright, yeah, just get the time. I do know because I'm walking the pond.
Probably some kind of minnow or something.
you probably want to know some costs, right, where we're at year to date.
Well, if we do a fish, we do want 2,490 of the fish. If we get
That's right, yeah, 2,500 if we were to do halfway.
Now, what your vendor suggested is if you were to do the math, he's saying that he doesn't feel confident it's gonna solve the problem. So you might, if you wanted to consider the bluegills, you might want to consider just that proposal and exclude the
And not the
mosquito.
fish.
And then
That's what we meant by half.
for the plants,
I think we meant by half was not doing mosquito fish, but doing the.
Got it. Okay, cool. So can I make a motion to approve?
what do you want to know your numbers first? You probably want to know your, like, where we're at year to date for the budget line.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so, right now, because to remind the board, I think we spent roughly $40,000 last month on the tree pruning. So out of that, out of your landscape maintenance line, you still have about, let's call it 30,000 to play with for the year. If you consider all these 3 plant proposals, that's roughly $34,000. So that's gonna wipe out that line.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but did we not have a, line item budget for farm help?
You do, that also includes your contract, you probably have an additional 12 in there.
Okay, so that, this then would come out of that, or,
You could pull whatever you decide, you could pull from the remaining variance of your contracted amount, that's fair to say.
so we have about 12 over and above our annual contract.
Yeah, I'd say 12 with the state.
Okay, then that would sufficiently cover this.
So you got 12 there, and then, so that would take care of the fish. Again, the pond plants, which I think from what we've been discussing are probably the more important in terms of life for the water. It's gonna bring nutrients, it's gonna bring more, filtration, it's gonna control some mosquitoes. So that one's 34,000 if you would like to consider those three proposals. And we could spread that out throughout the budget with the 12 in the pond line and the remaining balance to the landscape replacement price.
So real quick, same thing with the pond plants, if we were to go half of that, does that still get us started, where things start growing?
I,
So more money in the account, or is that gonna be a problem if we don't do it?
it would be a problem.
Bless you.
I could space it out a little bit farther to have fewer clusters. 6 feet off center, maybe move that to 10 feet off center.
Bless you.
Do they spread?
Yeah, over time, they will, because the organs, they don't spray these, they're not nuisance plants, so just let them propagate.
Yeah. So if we can do 50% on that,
Is there any bonus in plans?
What's the likelihood of them not making or not taking her, you know, when we install landscaping, sometimes it doesn't favor it. Dies pretty quickly, and what's your experience with that?
I would have to talk to our plant guys about that, and see what he can do.
Question for each of the board members. Brian, do you feel like you have a mosquito problem where you are?
Been here 4 years, maybe been bit by 2.
Okay, Karen, do you feel like you have a mosquito issue where you are?
no, I have a driveway issue.
Okay. I don't have a mosquito problem.
Great.
I have 4 o'clock in the morning.
Question, do you have a problem with mosquitoes, X or no? Yes or no, this is a simple yes or no question.
Okay, so what is the forecast for mosquitoes? Mosquitoes.
There's no way to forecast.
I'm not,
I mean, like, it's already,
Yeah.
studies, right?
no, we don't do that, we take it like color, and that'd be up to probably pest control companies to do that.
Okay, it's okay. So I mean, like, you don't have any forecast to be anywhere, so what can? So because you guys do the pond management, do they need environmental study related to that?
Very rarely, sometimes people have us do like fish monitoring, to see what species of fish are in the ponds, but as far as bugs, no, especially with mosquitoes, because they're not fully aquatic insects, it's just not something that's explored.
So when it comes to the plants, right? So there is a condition of a drought, if the drought situation, I mean, exposed to the same pace, even if you put the plants, what do you do? The success rate for the plants?
These are pretty hardy, so they do. You put them in the ground, and our plant guy, he's pretty tenacious. He might tell me, like, hey, let's wait until May to put them in the ground when it does start raining more and water levels rise. And even with these things, if there is drought condition, they will go dormant to save as much water and life as they can, so they will build a little bit dead, then once it starts raining again, they usually pop back up.
So even if you plant and then after the drought conditions increases, still there is a sustainability of the plants, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, real quick, Sure.
Derail, like saying, who deferred to answer my question, 1 minute, skip them. Bobby, do you have a problem with mosquitoes?
Nothing that I'm experienced with.
Okay, so I guess my point is, if by putting the plants in, once the plants become mature, if there's no attract rabbit flies that are gonna keep mosquitoes, how about we just bypass the fish altogether and let the plants do the job of mosquito control and algae control? Because then they're gonna provide some aesthetics as well as kill two birds with one stone.
And the plans are important, I just have to bring it to your attention that you're considering some high dollar things like speed humps, turfs, recreational centers. And, your speed humps, for instance, are looking around the $20,000 mark, so.
Okay.
That, some of these things like the turf have not been budgeted for, so you're gonna have to pull that also out of your surplus, so. Maybe it sounds like my suggestion would be let the vendor make some revisions to the current proposals, maybe dumb it down a little bit, 50% less. And then we could see after today's decisions, what our budget looks like if we want to move forward.
Okay, so you did say that we had about $12,000 in that account for ponds over and above our, annual contract.
Yes, simultaneously, we have to take into consideration, we are considering a lot of projects that haven't been budgeted for, so we might be stealing from those lines as well.
Okay,
And your landscaping gonna go up too. after you-
well, I think we all understand that.
Yeah.
So real quick, if we are frugal with the budget and watching the numbers, Karen, would you prefer we solve a speed hump problem or we solve a flowers around pollination? If you only could pick one.
Oh, that was fly.
Did you like that?
Yeah, pick the one you want first. Which one should we tackle first?
Oh, gosh, well, if I owned a house that backed up to the ponds, I would be saying the pond. But of course, I live in a house that backs up to, the Daytona 500.
Yes.
So it's kind of an unfair question for me because, am I gonna be selfish or am I going to be,
Which one do you think is better for the
well,
entire community?
safety is always, to me, the biggest concern. Property values predicated on aesthetics has got to be a secondary concern to safety always. So I would say, the speed humps for sure. Now, the question is how long is it gonna take for us to get the speed humps in? And is that something that's gonna go quickly, right? If that is, then, that's probably the low hanging fruit. If, the other concern is, how late into the season could we initiate something like this and still have it be successful? I mean, we don't wanna, it's the April meeting, so this may not get implemented until May. But if we push it off until May, is June, July too late to implement?
No, especially when your water levels here now, since we are still sort of in droughts from.
Yeah, so then I'd say it's no.
Let's table it for now, keep it on
Sure.
the list.
Is it time
after
for
you
you
do
to
other-
revise it, and kind of see if we can pull it
For
down?
the revision, if you're looking to go half, I can mix one of the plant species and we'll just keep the one and plant some every 12 feet instead of every 6, so it wouldn't cut everything.
I like that.
Try to get as close to that $12,000 mark that we have available
Yeah.
and that count. And then going into next year, then maybe we can, add to it.
I'll Google it, says for the mosquito, it's March to begin, it's in the forest, and then go to June, September, and typically until November, so. That's all, they're out there.
Okay,
Get some revised bids.
okay.
Okay.
If you do just want one of these two plant species, then just let me know which one. I can make those changes when I get that.
Well, I think if you use your professional expertise to tell us which one would be most beneficial to start with, because, I might like purple and somebody else might like white, that might not be the right decision, just
Yeah.
based off of it.
So one of the, which species are the most sustainable?
Yeah, they're about equal. Personally, I just like Arrowhead better, but they're, I don't know, this is one out of the other.
Which are the big blue?
The Arrowheads have a largely brought their specifically brought in.
I think that's a good area, it's the.
What's behind, the homes on Misty Oak?
That's, I believe that is a mix of Arrowhead, well, there's some other things in there.
There's lilies in, not lilies, but they're lotuses. They're lotuses that are in there. And the lotuses float in the water. So it's not just on the border, it's actually in the water and it's amazingly beautiful. Are those very expensive? And because those do proliferate.
Yes, they do. What is back there is kind of either really respect or not. It's not a true lotus. True lotuses are invasive, so we can plant them. But they have like the white flowers.
Right.
Yeah, it's a water lily. They are questionably invasive, so we typically don't plant them. And it's also, it's pretty hard to plant. They don't just, well, they have the pad, the long stem, and then that rhizome they live on is just thick and heavy. You gotta plant it down in the bottom of the pot.
So are they overall, are they beneficial? I mean, I don't mind if they're invasive or violating that we're not
Three.
doing it.
We, unless we're asked to, we don't really spray them heavy. We try to keep them away from the shoreline, keep them contained to a certain section of the pond, because they do have their benefits, they look nice, but we don't want them to overgrow too much.
And how do they do in terms of if you have fish in there, probably, yeah, and it would mitigate the mosquito issue, right? So it seems to me like they're beautiful. They, if they're invasive, that they proliferate pretty well, which I think they do. So we can plant a lot less of them. If you could just kind of incorporate that into your revisions and see how that, you know, come with information about the benefits and the detriments of those particular times. That would be great.
Yeah, I'll see if, it's just gonna kind of let my suppliers have anything, provide the waste, like.
And this bid is for
We
full
can
size,
grab you from the other column.
this is full size plants that they're putting in, right?
When they go in, they list them at about 1 to 2 inches, and then they go.
Okay, and there, can we plant seeds? Are there seeds for this as opposed to buying 3 grown ones that we could just drop around and work their magic?
I'm not sure on that.
No, see.
Are they rhizomes?
With these, no, these would be on bare.
Oh,
And some very fast bids for seeds as well, seeding.
That's a good thought.
Love
We
that.
got time, yeah.
All right, we good? Let's jump into pool. All right, turn it over to legal.
So supervisors, we've been in contact, Meredith and I have been, I'm sorry, I sound a little weird, I'm getting over a cold. We've been in contact with Vermont's council. We sent over the, agreement that was in the RFP package. They had some red lines, some of the items we do need to run by you all. I also know that there are some timing changes that will need to be brought before the board. So I don't know, do you want to address those first and then jump in? However y'all.
Yeah, just, it's a quick note, so I wrote it here. So the Lazy River's been delayed to begin in June 2026 instead of April. We've already worked with staff. We've notified Supervisor Hyam. They ran into some shipping issues with the manufacturer due to the war. So staff's working towards those preparations. It actually works better for us, gives us a better time to start staging these areas and start to prepare the operation for that. And then your pool will be shortly after June.
Is the board comfortable with closing the Lazy River down in June? Because that means it will probably be closed just based on the timing that we have in the contract. It will be closed over the 4th of July, which I do know is a very big holiday here. So I know summer is big. So I just want to make sure that we're aware of that in case we want to adjust anything in that.
Well, I know that we had talked about moving it to September after the peak summer was over, but then some issues came up with the cost of the lighting, which was gonna affect the quote by.
No, their bid is held for 365 days for the terms of the RFP package,
Okay.
and they will be required to honor that bid.
So if, with that in mind, if we're gonna have a 12-week delay on lights, I mean, if they can't do that legally, then I would prefer to push it off until after September, because I think closing the Lazy River over the 4th of July can be pretty detrimental.
Yeah, the way we drafted this bid package, and we did it specifically because we knew we were gonna have to tear it out spring break and summer and everything of that nature is we held that pricing for 365 days after awarding for that exact pricing.
Okay,
So if they come back and they don't want to honor their bid, that's another issue, but pursuant to what they bid on, and it was very clearly said in probably 10 different areas that this pricing, what you bid is set. And so they've got to stick to that.
They do have the option to not take the job. They have vocalized that if it becomes a financial burden to them, they would just have to opt out if we couldn't reach some kind of agreement. I'm not saying that they can't meet September, but
And Meredith, would we have to, if they don't want to take the job anymore, because of cost changing, because, the world will have to redo the RFP, correct?
That's correct. And we'll have to look into district remedy as well for that. They should have submitted a bid bond that we might be able to call on if they are now unwilling to hold their pricing.
They did not submit a bid bond, neither of the companies did.
Are there any limitation? If they want to back out, what is the time period that they need to give to us?
So do you mean the time period to redo the RFP
Or
or?
not, like, if they don't want to take the job, so what is the time period that they have to give?
Technically, let me pull our termination provision, I have the agreement up, so let me look at this. Termination, the contractor may terminate this agreement for cause by providing 30 days written notice of termination for the district. But the district may terminate the agreement immediately, for cause, providing a written notice of termination. The district otherwise will provide 30 days written notice of termination without cause. We will be responsible for costs, anything they've incurred on the project. So if they've started and something happens and, we terminate virtually part of the way through. My recommendation would, if the board wants to put it off because of the impact it could have on the summer, try and work with them. Their counsel was very good to talk to. We talked to him on Monday for about 30 minutes. Was very reasonable and we can try and have that conversation with him, but they would have to give us a 30-day notice. I'm assuming if we go back and say you can't change this pricing and we're gonna bump it to August or September, they'll give us an answer pretty quick. Just, I
Well,
guess.
do you have any gauge on what that answer would be based on conversations? Like percentage wise that you might lose on or it would still go forward?
worth to note, I think you should hear Joe's perspective from the operation on how he planned to stage this. And I don't think we foresaw too many issues with the FMB and the pool itself, which is why we were starting on the lazy river.
Well, so I think it depends on what we're talking about. If you guys are pushing, what components are you pushing to subject?
So if Lazy River with lights for night swimming and all that was isolated in June, the idea was September was gonna be the pool. So you would just close off in June, the Lazy River section.
If it's 8 weeks, it would be June and July.
Yeah, I mean, again, on the one hand, so the larger concern that you have is that you're entering into your house funds on something that is not currently needed. So when people do get hot, they do tend to kind of flock to the Lazy River. But in conversations with the district, we kind of work the monies out to where we can kind of bring value adds in, from the lifestyles side, to try to make up for that. So we prepared for really any eventuality, whether it was April or whether it was June. But again, ultimately, yeah, you're probably going to see, definitely some complaints at any point, because it is closed. That currently, you're kind of cool down spot.
Can I have, okay, so I have a couple of concerns. One concern certainly is clothing down the Lazy River, which is a big feature that we have, and during the hottest months of the season of the year. And the complaints that might arise, and the burden that puts on the homeowners. So that's a big problem. On the other hand, we have a real financial problem, because we've gotten all these bids last month before we saw what was happening with, not being political, but being very, matter of fact, we have an oil problem. And that oil problem, absolutely every material that we have, that we use nationally is going up in price. And so that also corresponds with, it's a hardship for them. They can back out, then we're back to scratch. We have to pay for another RFP. We have to go through the whole process again. And inevitably, if it's gonna be a hardship and burden to this vendor, it's gonna be a hardship and a burden to all vendors, our prices are gonna go up. All those rise and fall over time. So we have a couple of different things that are, what I would like to do, if I'm allowed to do that, is, Harold, you're on who rents their property out, are there any, is everybody else a vendor here?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any owners on the phone who would like to weigh in on this from your perspective, knowing all of the different possibilities? This could cost us significantly more if we put it off for a couple of months, or it could cause a lot of complaints and a lot of issues that you're going to have to bear the burden of. So I'd love to have homeowners weigh in on this as well, because you are our stakeholders in this. Pardon? Sorry. Thank you. No, I don't.
So, from my, I haven't been to church or rental, but I haven't, having to do with it. But I think we would do a great service to anyone that does have a short-term rental, to shut that into. I mean, we're literally cutting their business down and hurting their business. And not only that, our main sales is gonna go down, we're gonna get more bad reviews. To do that during the hot season, I agree with everyone else, it's a terrible idea. And
Would
like,
you,
very
would
visual,
you
so.
be okay paying 120% more if we waited 3 or 4 or 5 months?
I think the rest of the game that is gonna do to our rate, because I think in our short-term rentals,
Okay.
yes.
Fair enough.
So, Joe, when we do shut down the Lazy River, I guess my assumption of the scenario is that there's not gonna be any guests permitted to go into the Lazy River part at all,
That's correct.
correct? So if we do that in June, how is that going to affect the capacity of the pool? Because we're gonna have a huge seating problem. And we already have lines to get in here during June and July. I've been down here 4th of July's in a row, and there's been a line of people to get in. And if we reduce the capacity by all of that seating, what are we looking at?
Yeah, you're definitely gonna see a huge reduction in your capacity. It's not quite half, it's a third.
And that's after cafe, our revenue there, which is huge, huge revenue driver. That may, just 1 month of that may offset any additional expense and the price increase on the Lazy River, if that should come to pass. So,
Consideration, I can do it ever. And we're happy to kind of, do whatever we have to do to mitigate any concerns. I would just need to know if you're shifting Lazy River to a certain day, when is the pool then one, because I need to have a space there. Then I obviously need adequate time to get out to the members and to the homeowners.
And ultimately, the schedule changed because of the impact this has on the district. This is a board decision. This isn't a staff decision. This is a decision that needs to be made by you all. If Vermont comes back and wants to do a price change, we will do our best to say, hey, you've been on this, the pricing is up for 365 days. If the board is comfortable stomaching the price increase, we can do a change order and change the contract like that.
I mean, I still, in light of the challenges that we had with, back orders and different things, I still think that we should wait until after Labor Day to start this and potentially start it on September 7th, if they can agree to that.
And I think Supervisor Morningstar had something to say as well.
Would you possibly be able to go back to them on a legal basis and say, hey, look, the delay is on your side, it's on the delay of Solterra Resort? Will you extend that pricing for additional amount of time?
So the pricing is already, what they bid is held. So it's going to be a conversation.
Isn't that 365 then?
It,
This same.
Maybe like January 28th.
I want to check the language of the RFP that is sent out to make sure it could have been on the date of award or the date it was printed. So I want to check that. I can't check that language.
But either way, it'd be like before December, or January.
We did that so we did it so we could either do half of it before the spring break started, because that was the original plan, right? Was to do it before spring break and then do the other half now for summer. try to piece it in during hurricane season, so this will just, if you want to shift it, you'll just be shifting both to hurricane season. Which would still,
Well, I mean, my original thought was to do the lazy river in September, right after Labor Day, get that done. It'll be heated through the winter months and then do the main pool right after the first of the year when we go back into that slow season. And then we have a nice warm heated lazy river to offer guests while we're destroying this.
and this council did say that, permits will be required for some of this work because the original April 13th date that in there, when we talked to him, that was before we heard about the shipping delays. He said that it wasn't possible for them to get a permit by April 13th from the county to perform this work, which I don't disagree with. It takes a bit to get the county to issue permits. So, I mean, delaying would give them time to work on that. But it's ultimately a board decision, of what you all want to do. If you want to bump it, then I would hold the red lines that he's given and we can bring back everything that they say. If there's no price change, and then kind of go from there.
What's your recommendation on this?
Well, as I just said, because I kind of, envisioned all of this with the homeowners in mind and, the peaks and valleys in the, busy season versus the slow season. And when I, put deliberate thought to this, I came up with these dates as being the least disruptive to, the homeowners and the guests themselves. And doing the lazy river first and getting that heated provides a bridge to get the other thing done without sending people into the deep freeze, because I've been in that thing in January and it is cold.
And if as long as we're not hit by 5 hurricanes in a row, knock on wood, y'all know I really don't want another hurricane to come my way. But we could, we can talk to them about doing them maybe back to back in the fall or something. Because I had the same thought when Brian mentioned that it could be June. I was just thinking to the June and July meetings last year when the line is down the side of the building to get into the pool. So, but it's whatever the pool wants
So
to
do
do.
we need to vote on this, or do we just need to give recommendation as per?
I think Stan had a question.
Yes,
Thank you. So once they start, then we know how long does it take to complete?
I defer to them on that.
Once they start.
Once they start, they making, right? How long do it take, did they give any time?
Yeah, so they gave me a ballpark of 8 to 12 weeks for just the lazy river. For the pool, I would anticipate another 8 weeks. So if we wanted to do everything in one shot, incorporate an additional 8 weeks to maybe 12 being the worst case, so 18 weeks.
And we will write that into your contract. The way we had it currently written, was actually 30 days, within, for substantial completion within 30 days, full completion within 60. We'll work with Vermont and say what's our realistic time frame, and we'll have a substantial completion date of X, and then final completion, which includes, the punch list items for construction. We also included, the liquidated damages clause, for each day that expires after the time of substantial completion, so that they don't substantially complete that project, within the time that's in the agreement, we will be able to recover liquidated damages. I don't know, so that was something the board requested we put in, and we did. So we will line out in this agreement substantial completion days, final completion days, because we're not gonna leave it open, and then that's too.
That's great. So I think let's do on everyone's comments. I do formally agree September is the ideal month, because, even in the whatever is going on, supply chain issues, they might subdue, or we have a clarity whether it is ever going to happen, because if the material is coming from through the Europe,
Right.
we are going to logistical nightmare. So even if we award today, there's no guarantee that supplies are going to come back within like 6 weeks or 2 months, because not many ships are being
Right.
run through that channel.
Right.
So if we wait until September, if they award them in September month, and if we tell them to start in September month, by then we know whether this is ever going to be, they're going to resolve this logistical issue, or we're going to live with the nightmare.
Right.
And then we can make it a call, considering all the factors.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we would need, probably a motion to, confirm September being the start date for the Lazy River and pool in conjunction, is what I'm understanding. And then we'll work with Vermont to see if that's possible.
Straight up.
I'd like, you want to?
I'd like to make a motion to, start the Lazy River resurfacing, on or about September 7th. And the main pool to be,
Shortly after the
After
completion.
8 or 12 weeks.
I would say shortly after the completion.
shortly after, no later than January 4th. How's that?
I second that motion.
Second, Supervisor Newell, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Bear with me.
And I'll get back with Dan, and send him the feedback. There are some things in the agreement, but I'll just bring it all back in May. If there's any type of change price order or an issue with the
Okay.
timing, I will bring back all of their red lines, and any change orders in May, and we can walk through it, because some of their red lines we will need, board approval on. And I'll get it to you before that meeting as well.
Okay.
On the insurance side, like, now many companies, many vendors are adding this uncertainty conditions also, the irregular price hikes. Do they have that covered?
We don't, I have that in some of my, construction contracts, with one group actually I work with here in Polk County. We do have an addendum that says, certain price caps, if things adjust too much. Specifically, we started adding this in when olive oil was going crazy during COVID. We can add that in and request if they would be amenable to it. We could look at adding that condition in.
Because you might end up, for example, once the project starts, and you have, the price goes up, then we have a debate like, we approve that money or not.
Right.
But right now, itself, we have that cap, like, 3%, 5% or 6%. Then they can also abide by that condition, and we don't have issues at all.
Okay, we can work that in.
Okay, if you're agreeable to whatever he said, then I'm agreeable to it as well.
Yeah, no, this is good. We'll let you know next month how those conversations go. Anything else, Lee?
Not for the tools.
Okay. All right, everybody, let's jump into our long-awaited landscape RFP. So board members, for Florida statute compliance, the RFP is actually on your tablets right now. So you'll see on top, there's a couple of different tabs. I'm just gonna go in the order that I had in my notes here. Not any specific order, but we also have Mark Young with Sunscape, who's also gonna be reviewing these. I wanted to show you his bid comparison, but unfortunately the TV is not possible. It's not available right now, but Mark, I had in my list to review Juniper first, Dora second. Apologies, Juniper, Prince and Sons, Dora, and then Yellowstone. Since Yellowstone's our current vendor, and then we'll go straight into business. I know that Mark Yon has some follow-up questions for some of the bidders that he's gonna be asking on some of the RFCs that were submitted. So at this time, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Mark Young.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Yeah, and Brian, so do the Board of Supervisors have a copy of the comparison?
They
Printed
don't have
copy?
a copy of the comparison. We were gonna show it on the TV, but unfortunately, the TV is not available at this time.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
well, that's all right.
Give me 1 second, actually, Mark. Let me send something to the printer. Bear with me.
It would be helpful if they had it.
Yeah. No, let's do it. Let me.
All we print.
Sure, yeah, please.
So while we're printing that, bid comparison sheet, or
Joe.
It's that's just that Paul Cross there.
Which tab this guy is presenting, sorry?
So if you look on the top of the, it's not a tab, it's one of the. Yeah. What was, yes, we're probably gonna be reviewing Juniper first, but, we're getting a bid comparison sheet for the board to review with give us like 5 minutes, we'll be.
that's your score sheet. I will, while we're waiting on those to print, I will go through the legal sufficiency. supervisors, as you know, when we do formal RFPs, I go through and I make sure that all of the requirements that we put in the RFP are met by the bidders and that information is provided. So of the, bids I received, and I received the scanned copies from Rosetta, they sent them over to us, they are not submitted to us directly. Yellowstone and Juniper fulfilled all of the requirements, and I have no qualms about anything they submitted. Dora did have a couple things that they missed. One, they missed a few blanks on some of the forms, but nothing that was substantial that gives me major concerns. It was just kind of an addendum that didn't have the number in it. As you know, I am very thorough. Dora also did not provide proof of sufficient financial capability, and what I reviewed, if there are other forms that were submitted to Rosetta, I did not see them. Additionally, they included an org chart with all of their management and things like that. They did not include the resumes of those individuals. Prince & Sons was another one that submitted that did miss a couple of the requirements in the RFP. One of the requirements was a history of fulfilling similar contract with necessary organization, personnel, capital, equipment. They did not include the full equipment list. They referenced an attachment and I just didn't see the attachment. It could have been in a packet that was with Rosetta. I did not see them. A certificate of insurance, they did not provide that. I do work with rents in other districts, so I know that they can provide that. It just wasn't in the packet. They also did not provide the proof of sufficient financial capability. And then the narrative description of the approach. Some of your other bidders had an actual timeline of what they would be doing based 1 through 30, 31 through 60, 60 through 90, you know, kind of the tiered approach of when they come on board. That was not provided by Prince. I also want to point out this RFP, we did it for the maximum number of terms. So your one initial term plus 4 renewals. If there was going to be any change in price during those renewals, that was supposed to be bid on. So as it stands right now, Yellowstone, Prince & Sons, and Juniper are going to be holding the price that they bid on for all of the renewal terms. Dora does have a small increase each year to put them in line. And that matters because when we go through and do our scoring sheet, your price number that's already filled out on your form is actually based on a formula. So that is based on an average cost over all of the renewal terms, and then you divide it by the lowest bidder number to see how many points out of 20 they get. So Dora was still your lowest price option, even with the increases with the renewals, and you'll see the points for the other 3 proposals in there. But anyways, that's my little legal sufficiency kicker. I have worked with all of these companies except for Dora, but I know Dora works at a lot of places around the state. I just haven't had that opportunity. So anyways, that is all I have on this, unless anyone has any legal questions on RFP process.
Fantastic brief. Couple of questions.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Okay. So is that like, Dora is the 20, what that means?
So they got 20 points out of 20 for that.
Oh, you made the points.
Yeah,
Got it.
because that is based on a formula. Lowest bidder gets all 20 points.
Okay. So I see that in the Prince & Sons, equipment list, insurance, financial, efficiency, and the timeline, a bunch of things are missing from it.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with that from the review point of view?
So it's up to the board on whether you want to waive those requirements. The board does have the power to say, you know, this wasn't provided. We had a similar issue with some of our pool RFPs and
Right.
the board made the election to not, you know, that we could waive those requirements. Normally how you would see that reflected is in the scoring. So if you're not comfortable with it, you'll give them a lower score in that area.
Have they given the resumes?
Uh,
People who are working on.
Prince & Sons did give resumes, yes.
I would motion to waive those requirements at the time that we can hear all the RFPs presented.
Okay. And Karen, what questions of that?
Yeah, so I'd like to know, we have a consultant
Yeah.
firm
Thank
that
you.
I would like to have them weigh in on it.
Yep.
Yep, they are. While we were printing those, I was just going through the legal side of things to be more efficient.
Now we're gonna go through March.
And do all of that
Yeah.
stuff. I'd like to hear what everybody has to say.
Mark, so the board now has a printout of your score sheet. I will kick it back off to you.
All right, Brian, and to start, I've got a question for council because what you had just mentioned really about Dora, when I finally got these their bids in order to spread, and it seemed like the directions were to average their cost, and we normally ask them not to modify any of the bid forms, and so that those additions that were done, we had no way to spread it. So with Brian's permission, I contacted them and I asked them to spread their number to average it like everyone else did. And if that was an overstep, I apologize. So the numbers on this bid comparison is the average billing that Dora came back and submitted to align itself with everyone else. And in Juniper's case, that bid form is meant to be variable on top and then just a flat line 12 installments on the bottom. Reason being, some of our customers have that pay as you go strategy and some like to have average cost. But what it does do is it self-reconciles because the upper part of the fee summary should be what they actually do. The scope is very frequency based. So we want them to populate each cell with the cost of service and all the categories for that month. And then that can be compared, it's what they did each month versus what they got paid each month. So Juniper simply just complied with that format, didn't change their price whatsoever. It doesn't change any of the price categories. It just had them fill out the form correctly. So with that
And Mark,
said,
just to confirm on the record, this was provided to every single bidder. This was not just provided to one bidder.
well, it was provided to all the bidders within the instructions to average it. And that's why Yellowstone and Juniper and Prince did. Only Dora added in the additional years to their bid form, which was really modifying a bid form that they shouldn't have done. But the main thing, we couldn't spread that. We couldn't take their number. I guess we could have done 5 different years, but it was really uncharacteristic. And we didn't see these bids until later on. What we normally do is the documents are sent to us separately, the exhibit 2. And actually, we didn't even receive all the exhibit 3s, which is their extra pricing schedule for add-ons. But we can certainly, the ones that we were missing, we can obtain and finish that spread for the board to review. But all of your requirements that are within the package are all the requirements of the CDD and of course the state. What we look at is the numbers. The scope is very specific. What was prepared for Solterra Resort was a unique scope, taking some commonalities of Central Florida, our climate zone 9B and the turf types that you have, but anything that we felt required special requirements within the scope were developed. So if everyone reads through the scope, and most of these contractors, except for Prince & Son, they've not bid for us. I understand them to be a reputable firm, but the scope is broken down into those schedules. And that's why we do spread the results, because it's not a matter of who's high or low, but who read the scope and who bid their work in accordance with the scope's requirements. The general services requirements, certainly the agronomics, the bedding plants and mulch requirements are pretty simple. The palms are really set on set frequencies based on when those palms seed, because I know that's something that hasn't happened at Solterra. The palms pretty much all seed in the spring, so you want to trim them in the summer or otherwise you miss the cycle. And then our irrigation scope is an operate, check, clean, and adjust scope. It does not include routine repairs. There's normally an allowance given, but otherwise, we've had some CDDs that require that, but then it just blows up the price because they're going to price worst case scenario. But by running the system the way the IMC, the way we require it, they've got to operate every zone. They've got to check for clogged nozzles to clean them, to adjust nozzles, the direction of the spray pattern, as well as the timing of it, and to make sure that, whatever freeze protection and rain sensors that we have are fully operational so we don't waste water, of course, and to water according to the required precipitation rate of the turf in landscaping. In saying that, we just roll up raw numbers if we can. And I already explained some difficulty we had that we, in our sense, we overcame. But then we roll up the raw numbers unless there's a glaring mistake, which in this case there was not. And the highlights that we provided simply flag things that are out of the averages. It doesn't necessarily indicate that they're wrong. It just indicates that compared to the other bidders, that they're out of those averages by some degree. And you can clearly see what's flagged. It appeared that, Yellowstone, Juniper, and Prince all were pretty close with their general services. Dora was a good bit lower. So the questions there is, how many crew members does each company provide during season and out of season? Are they mowing with the same crew that they're detailing? Or in the case of Yellowstone right now, they're providing a separate mowing crew and then a separate detail crew. A couple big differences that affect general services in our scope versus some others is we require 52 visits a year. And there's a lot of scopes that they only come 40 times a year. Most of our clients, if not all of them, require 52 visits. The 40 to 42 cut set, that's pretty normal. It's like from an October 15th to a March 15th, on season, off season, fairly typical. The detail that we require is to take the property, break it into thirds, and to thoroughly detail a third of it every 3 weeks, which is 17 times annually. That, over the course of my career, has indicated that's the time limit where it leaves everything in an acceptable state, minimal weed pressure, and everything being properly trimmed as needed, not trimming everything every cycle, but trimming it as needed properly, a lot of it by hand or properly with sharp hand power shears used correctly. That has been developed primarily because all of our clients expect an acceptable condition, and all of them have budgets. And that's what is proven to me over a long career that works. And it's used a lot of places, but it's also a primary target for value engineering on these projects. And your scope includes what I've just described. So, I mean, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. Yes, ma'am.
Could the reason for the price differential be that Dora is already on site with our HOA? Because, that makes it a lot easier for them. There's a continuity, right? When you have the same company on site, both HOA and CDD, their people are here anyway.
Well, you'd have to ask them that, but I think I have a number of other communities where you have a CDD and an HOA managed by the same landscape contractor, and there you just have to be very careful that you draw strict lines, that your labor is being utilized separately from the HOA. But it really just comes down to manpower.
But there's also, when the equipment is already here, it just becomes less expensive for them. And I think
Sure.
that there's a cost effectiveness factor for them that gets passed down to us.
Yeah.
My other thing is about coordination. We've got this water pressure issue and they're coordinated effort. Now, generally speaking, I like Yellowstone and I like the staff and all of that stuff. I was a little perturbed because last month, and this has been an ongoing issue. Last month, we voted on, a month ago, we voted to get this moss, and I think we've been discussing this for a long time. This moss that has just proliferated all over our trees and then started dripping down onto our palms, our lower palms, those cootie palms and everything else. Cootie palms. And it's just killed so many trees because it hasn't been attended to. And so we were very insistent that it get done now. And I was a little perturbed to drive through here day after day after day, all month long, seeing all of this moss just still there until the day before yesterday,
Environment.
a couple of days ago. And they just came in with all of their equipment. We have a whole month with very few people on site, right? And they waited until literally the busiest week of our entire year to bring in their trucks and their equipment and start doing everything, handling everything, and putting down the manuals, and doing all of that. And they're fighting and competing, and they're out here at the pool area when it was about as busy could get, doing all the landscaping things. I want to know, why did they drag their heels until, oops, we've got the RFP vote coming up, we better hurry up and get this done. And that was very disturbing to me. No regard for our community, for our specific needs, or timeframes or anything else. That was very disturbing.
Let's talk about our general operation,
I need to clarify one thing. Mark, just going back to the pricing, so the instructions in the RFP on the pricing form, and I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding, I just want to make sure that I'm interpreting in my head correctly. So the instructions on the pricing forms said for bidders, if they were going to change their prices in subsequent years, to submit additional fee forms. What it sounded like is that it was asked for the bidders to average their price over the 5 years and submit that. Am I misunderstanding something there?
The instructions are as they are, but Yellowstone, Juniper, and Prince did average. And they, if not, they should have submitted separate bid forms for each of the 5 years. But
Okay.
Dora
And then-
actually modified the bid form and added just separate totals under it that prevented us from putting it into a program to spread the results.
Okay, and any instruction that was given to any of the bidders on those price forms and feedback, so that information was provided to all bidders, correct?
I did not speak to Yellowstone and Prince about any corrections to their bid form because there weren't any. And Juniper's form was correct. It was just populated in an average format instead of variable, the way the form is designed, which is a common submittal problem. You know, I didn't read your specific instructions for how to populate it, but we give specific instructions and it still gets averaged. It doesn't affect price. It doesn't affect any category of price.
Right, I guess for the purposes of, because this is a formal bid and evaluation of it, it has to be evaluated on the criteria that was included in the instructions. And if not, then, I mean, Meredith, are you comfortable having them waive something related to price?
So Mark
My
contacted them.
understanding, yeah, I was gonna say, my understanding is that Mark and was in communication with anyone who had a potential error in their way that they filled out the form. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that the other proposers' forms,
After the
Mark's
RFP
position
was-
is, were submitted correctly.
Without any interference. Yeah,
That is fair.
Okay.
you can do that, yes. After the RFP was submitted, we went through the proper channels. A week later, we reached out to the vendor, just with some general questions.
You need to clarify some of this. So one quick question to Mark, a final question. Mark said 52 visits per year, right? So all the bidders that they gave was 42 visits. So there is a difference about the 10 cut visits for the grass. That's something that.
For mowing, yeah, good question. We're talking about, I would
That's what
believe,
Mark said.
turf care, maybe Schedule B.
Ryan, there's
Mark-
a little echo. Could you restate that question for me, please? It was a
Can you-
question
the
regarding
mowing,
turf care.
So Supervisor Nealon said that in the RFP, it stated 52 visits per year.
Yes.
But some of the bidders came in the 40s, so can you touch base on the mowing for each?
Keep in mind that it is 52 service visits per year, but the mowing requirements are 40 to 42. So
So
they're
there
they're
may be
on
a
property,
chance
they're
of
on
doing
property
it
every week,
some.
but they're not mowing every week in the winter.
That's correct. So when they're not mowing, they do details, pruning, yank out plants, stuff like that.
Right. So Mark, I have
Oh,
a
you-
question.
Real quick, Supervisor Nealon looks like he had a couple.
So there is a schedule, right? He mentioned something about schedule C, for example, farm trimming and other areas. But right now, on this form, we see the schedule D. Is that difference have any impact overall?
Good question. Mark, you want to review the schedule and maybe the entire scope of the Sunscape program on an annual basis, how everything's blocked out specifically?
Yeah, certainly. And I think I've stated those general services requirements as far as the detail frequency, the mowing, and then just a general fact that they are there 52 weeks a year. And just one more note on that, Brian, you kind of alluded to it, is in that they'll do like one section a week and they're mowing also in the summer. In the winter, most contractors would mow every other week and do two sections when they're on detail to make that work. And because it requires less manpower. The turf care and tree shrub care line items are agronomics. So that is their fertilization, pest and disease control categories. And they're driven by the schedule. Like the turf care has a January liquid and weed control, a granular fertilization in March. You have another granular fertilization in May, along with arena, which is for chinch bug control, is normally applied at the same time unless we haven't been that dry. And in that case, they might hold it off until early June because it only has a 6-week residual. We respect a nitrogen blackout really throughout Central Florida that prohibits the application of nitrogen-based fertilizers from the end of May to the end of September. So in the July-August time period, we put out minors because, like liquid iron and so forth, that we can legally put on the turf. It keeps it green until we can come back and fertilize it again in October. They're also during that time, they're looking for any fungal, any disease problems, a little outbreak, pest problems, and those are treated as part of their IPM program, just an ongoing maintenance of and looking for pest and disease problems that either we may report to them or their staff may report in-house. The tree shrub program is all the ornamentals, everything within the bed space. And that has a February and October granular fertilization requirement, and then also a minor's application in the summer. And there, the IPM is probably a little bit more frequent. Most contractors carry a little money in their program knowing that they're going to get a report of, when things flush out in the spring, aphid activity, things like that are somewhat typical. And so they have that preventative program in place. The bedding plants is your annual flowers. And the reason it's scheduled for January, April, July, and October is that's when the growers have the product available. So we're really following their schedule more than they're following ours. And that is a pretty extensive requirement. There's both an installation and a maintenance requirement. It includes changing out all the soil medium in the spring change out. And then all the other change outs still get everything tilled in down to 6 inches. We're top dressing with pine fines, and pine helps build up the nitrogen in the soil. Teaspoon of Osmocote in each pit, which is a slow release fertilizer, and it has a strict requirement for the flowers being in 4.5-inch separate pots and planted 9 inches on center. Varieties that can last the entire 90 days, because that's what their warranty is covered in our scope, that if they don't last 100, the full length of the 90 days, they get replaced at no charge. Bed dressing is a combination of mulch or mini pine bark around the amenity center and pine straw throughout the balance of the common areas. And, we have worked with the existing contractor and takeoffs of our own to arrive at the prescribed amount of bales of pine straw, cubic yards of mulch. And that's really to be done at the board's request. Right now, since the pine straw was just done right about the time we were coming on board, we figured that to be a fall installation. And, with the Lazy River refurbishment and what's going on there, it could be moved to January. It's just a variable, depending on what we're doing at that time. We've talked about some plant replacements. It's the icing on the cake, so it should be done pretty much when everything is through. On the palm tree trimming, you notice in the individual bids, it's scheduled specifically like date palms, they're seeding now, and they should finish in May. We used to have it scheduled for June. With our warmer winters, they have seeded earlier, and the date palms drop dates and they stain pool decks. So our idea is to get on those and trim those palms timely. So now we have them scheduled, and it should be November. There's a couple of the bidders have it scheduled for October, but it's May and November for the date palms. And we also, with the specialty palms, we have a drenching program. It's quarterly. And that is just simply a nutritional fungicide, insecticide drench for the bud and the roots. And we've scheduled that the month after two of the trimmings for no other reason they can get the wand up in the bud a little easier. The other thing for date palms is OTC injections, and that is to prevent the bacterial disease of lethal bronzing. And since we started doing that now about 6 years ago, recommendation of the 3 PhDs that helped write our scope, it has worked. We've not lost any. The silver date palms are most prone to it, but those are done in April, July, and October. The rest of your palm trees, where a lot of the money is spent, 501 sables, queen palms, and the Bismarcks are trimmed once a year in July, again, with the estimated completion of their seeding process during the month of June. The irrigation spec, as I mentioned a moment ago, is once per month. Some contractors will break it into quarters and come once a week. Your site is just about at the verge of the size for that, but it is to come on site to do that full inspection, to report any repairs back. In the Exhibit 3 attachment, should be used because it does, when the contractors in the competitive spirit, we try to get predetermined unit prices for plant material and other products. But most importantly, it provides a discount on parts and a prescribed labor rate for the irrigation technicians and their assistant, their labor that's helping them. And that way, when invoices are submitted, they can very easily be policed for accuracy. Irrigation can be a big number, so that measurement is there to try to control the expense as it occurs. And for the most part, I think the contractors, as they populated their fee summaries, have responded well to the scope. But a step that we're missing, and it's really up to the Board of Supervisors and management, but a scope review that we like to do. A lot of the questions are being asked of what we would normally do. A lot of times it's boiling it down to a couple finalists, but to say, Mr. Juniper, Mr. Yellowstone, Prince and Son, and Dora, if you're awarded this job on this date, tell us how you're going to go about it. How are you going to mow? Are you going to detail? What size is your crew? What's the experience? How do you want to run the IMC and so forth? And that way, that feedback comes as an understanding. And normally, when I've done those in the company of the board or representatives from the board, the answer becomes fairly obvious because a lot of the questions that we're coming up with right now could be answered in that method. But I don't set the rules. It's only a recommendation. But I'm happy to field any additional questions, to have follow-up meetings in person, whatever we need to do to get the right answer. But it is an important decision, and hopefully we'll arrive at the correct one.
Question to Mark. So he mentioned, highlighted the price differences, because I know the logic that he took, for example, Schedule B in Yellowstone, 7,650, but on average, the Juniper and Dora gave 18,000, 22,000. But whereas Prince and Sons and Yellowstone gave like 7,000, 9,000 respectively. I think the same logic that he applied in the bed dressing Schedule D for Yellowstone, because the difference of the price is way beyond other bidders. So I just wanted to know, in the numbers point of view, his logic is right, but when it comes to actual work and deliverables, does the numbers suffice? Even the numbers is like pretty low. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I had talked to Mark. I mean, Mark, I'll chime in on this because we had this exact conversation. So these highlighted numbers, like on Schedule B, what Mark is questioning is like, hey, what's your labor force? How many people are you dedicating to us? Because if the number is that low, are you just giving us 4 guys to manage the whole property, whereas maybe the other vendor's giving 10?
Right.
So one of Mark's suggestions is upon approval and awards, we still want to sit with the vendor whom we're going to elect services with and probably do a little amendment to the scope, because I think there might have been some misunderstandings throughout the RFP process, and we want to make sure that it's airtight to the scope that Sunscape set, which is a perfect scope for our property. Yeah.
And lastly, when it comes to irrigation inspection, right? Generally, how the irrigation inspections happens? Is it like periodically they come and check each zone, like they divide this into different zones? They come and check those zones and then figure out, okay, there is some problems or is everything is working fine? Or they go randomly and then check where all the heads are gone or anything like that. How does the study go?
Yes. Yeah, irrigation, so your monthly irrigation wet checks, your inspections, they're going to look at certain zones. So it looks like we have 174 zones. So most likely our current vendor, what do you guys do? You block it out into 4 blocks or something?
Yeah. Controller, well, 3 main controllers for the boulevard, and then each part has a controller, and that's, so our irrigation tech, start with controller 1, and you move to controller 2, and then, so on and so on, and all of the controllers, every zone is checked. And that's why every report, when I send the report to Brian, along with the proposal for repairs, it includes all that information. If there's like a valve, I on the proposal, I put valve number 23 for controller 1 needs replacement and so on.
To answer your question, every vendor might do it a little differently, but every month, or to Mark's point, maybe they like to spread it out to quarterly, maybe they'll come out once a week. And, instead of doing 40 in one shot, maybe they'll do 10 in 1 week. But every vendor's gonna have a little different where they're going to run a specific area of zones and make sure that there's no breaks, leakage, broken heads, stuff like that.
And I also want to point out that today, while we're evaluating this, I know that there were comments about, potential changes in scope, potential changes in pricing. The only thing you can evaluate today is what was submitted under this RFP, under this scope, this pricing. After the contract is awarded, if they come back in a year and say, hey, we need to change the pricing or something, we can do that. If you want to add additional service in, sometimes I have boards that do their annual rotations on like an additional service basis, and then they get sick of approving it every quarter, so it becomes automatic. Anything like that will be done through a contract amendment. The only thing the board can evaluate today is that there was in the submission packet and the evaluation criteria that is provided by the board, not any potential scope changes, not any potential pricing changes, that's just what was submitted.
Yeah, under these prices, like the totals, right, 254,000 for Dora, 315, Prince, 316 for 333 Yellowstone. They have the flexibility to adjust the numbers which are listed on the table, right? Like, for example, schedule A, C, whatever, general services, traffic. They have freedom to adjust to reach to this number, right? It's not that they have to exactly for bed dressing $44,000. They have to only use that for 44,000 for bed dressing. It's not like that, right? They can adjust this number.
All we care about is the grand total.
Yeah, that's all, right? Yeah, that's all.
It's like these.
Yeah. Yeah.
But things such as, if there's mulch pricing that was bid on per cubic yard, they're gonna be tied to that per cubic yard mulch pricing and annual, any type of plant charge that was bid on. So the first one that comes to mind is annuals, because I've been doing a lot of annuals this month. If they bid $202.25 per annual, they're gonna be held to that $2.25 per annual during the term of this contract. That will be the price that they're held to. For your monthly payments and your annual payments, it'll be whatever that number is at the bottom line. As long as they're sticking to what they bid on price wise, it's within or.
Yep,
That's all. Thank you.
great questions. Supervisor Winker had some questions.
Yeah, so, I wanted to know, Mark, there are 4 companies here. I'm guessing that you've worked with all 4 companies in the past?
I have not had the privilege to work with Prince and Son to date. That's the only one.
Okay, and what are your thoughts on the other 3 comparatively in terms of cooperation, follow through, on quality of work?
Well, I think that, all the companies are capable of it. We all know that most businesses, and certainly the landscape business, is people-based. So it's whatever people are assigned to the job. Certainly all of them are capable. What we look for in these processes is to make sure that the contractors have all the tools necessary to do a good job and to execute the scope of work the way we've written it. Because if they do, we have 100% confidence that our program will produce a good result for the board and all your residents. If they do not, and if they can't perform or find out that they're underwater and start resisting our supervision, that becomes an issue. So that's why I think it's so important to understand what each contractor is putting forward as far as their plan. And we're seeing numbers and we know what they were given by council to bid, but there's always variables involved. And these numbers would indicate that there are variables. And I think that those variables should be resolved before a contract is awarded.
So are you suggesting that the board not award contract today?
Council, I can't make that. All I'm telling
Yeah.
you is that we're missing a step, to me in scoping these contractors to know what the numbers include, because looking at raw numbers doesn't tell the whole story. But if an award has to be given, I mean, we're on the receiving end of that and we will cooperate. We will work with anyone that's selected and do our best. But you're all looking at the same numbers that I'm looking at. And I think we would feel more comfortable just from a price standpoint with Yellowstone, Juniper, or Prince, just because the Dora number, to me, I think we can certainly work with those guys. A lot of the people in Dora have a lot of experience, but I don't believe that their bid follows the scope the way it has been drawn up.
Okay, so you would just be asking clarification questions. We would not be amending any type of scope. As presented, you would just be asking clarification questions on why they bid that number.
Yeah.
Yeah, I.
You just gave that number, bottom line.
I mean, it's pretty far off.
Far too important of a decision that we have to live with, and that can literally change the nature of the appearance of the community, the value of the community. And I don't, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're in a particular time of year when transition could afford to wait for a few months if we need to do so. I'd rather make a sober and correct decision based upon solid information and where we're comparing apples to apples and everything is exactly the same and everything. Ultimately, we're paying you a lot of money, Mark, and we're going to lean on you very heavily because we see these things, we can see the numbers and the discussions, but really texturally, you have far more competency to make this decision, honestly, than we do. We are relying heavily on you. So it would be my vote that if it's your determination that we're not ready to make this decision yet, and that it would be more beneficial to us, make more sense to put it off for another month.
So a couple of things. One, the price was submitted cannot be changed. Dora cannot come back after we ask clarifying questions. That number can't change.
We just have to understand
We do
what
need to
they mean by
understand.
that.
So you can either ask those questions during the presentation today if they're prepared to give a little bit more deep dive on it, or you can have staff go back over the next month and ask those clarifying questions. These proposals can be held by the district for 90 days. I'll tell you that after today, if we do wait till next month, the cone of silence will still apply. You cannot talk to the proposals individually. So just keep that in mind, that that's going to keep going.
And there is the benefit of the element of surprise, But, so Mark, let me ask you a question. Do you feel like you have enough information that you can weigh in on these presentations right now with each of the vendors to ask those questions, to get those answers so that we can make an informed decision today?
Doors in the room.
Well, Karen, again, I don't know the timing of this. I mean, actually, in our business, we're already a little bit late to the game. I'm sure you'd have to give notice. So, a May 1, June start is not ideal for the landscape business. fall, winter time, anytime from October 1 to January 1's the prime time for an anniversary date for contract. But because this is a CDD, and we're operating under the governance of council, which we should, but I have had these kind of meetings before where a workshop was set up with a quorum of supervisors to have to interview these contractors individually, and you figure out everything at that point, and then you come back with a firm recommendation. The board makes up their mind after we go through a series of questions, but I don't know that this is the format. When we've done these before, it's like a half hour, 45-minute interview, and we ask the contractor, we talked at the beginning of the call, or my portion of the call, that it's all people based. So what we recommend is at pre-bids, you bring your marketing people. At scope review meetings, you bring your operators. You bring the people that are going to be on site doing the work on the community every day. And so if that step could be arranged in timing and approval of council in a period of time. Now, whenever you renew, we've started work in June or July. I don't think you wait till fall.
Hey, Mark,
Yes.
this is me. That was anticipated today.
You're
Conduct individualized. Savannah,
Mary,
can
thumbs
you
up.
explain?
Yeah, so when somebody submits under the forms, one of the forms that they're submitting and having to sign and notarize is that they have bid to the scope as presented, as discussed during the pre-bid meeting. The first addendum we did issue in mid-March, did include the revised scope that we talked about at the pre-bid meeting. Normally for formal RFPs, you'll remember this when we did, the amenity management ones last year, as well as the maintenance one. That it was kind of a Q&A session, but they have bid and signed forms attesting to the fact that they've bid on that scope. So it's up to the board, if the board wants to go through and have the presentations and do the interviews with them. But we can't put any new or more requirements on the proposals.
And also, I'd say, everybody's gone through great effort to be here. At the same time, you're here to do this patchwork and go back if it was necessary. But since everybody is here, presumably you have your questions lined up, you have your considerations lined up, and as each one is presenting separately, then you are able to ask those questions, we can assess, and we can just get on with this.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, that's why we're all here today.
Yeah, let's start with Dora. Dora, thank you for your attendance. Yeah, I know it is. I don't know if Juniper's on the call. If you are, we'll get to you in a second. But so Dora, we had a couple highlights here. So in general general services for Schedule A, it looks like the count is significantly lower than the other bidders. Can you explain to us your pricing as you?
Yeah, so we have budgeted 3 million full-time in the summer, 2 million in the winter. And the reason we're able to be a little more competitive on the general services, we are here on site, as you mentioned. So that helps with transportation of our labor force to the job, overhead with equipment and whatnot. We also look at this as a premier property for us. We use it for a lot of our references. And we're very happy out here, so we take that into consideration on our pricing as well. So that is why we have that competitive price. But as far as the scope goes, we do have 52 services included. The full scope that's requested in the RFP is covered. But that's the main reason for us being able to be a little more competitive.
Sure.
I think that sets us apart too as the most qualified bidder. We already got a manager on site, we have 2 irrigation techs on site, we have the staff people already on site to help with issues, say that there is irrigation break. We already have staff that can address it the same day. Same thing with our agronomic techs that are on site. The other thing is, a lot of times you see with the CDDs, make like you see finger pointing with boundaries. That we have a CDD and they put out and it's all finger pointing. So that's what helps with that as well.
Great, thank you. Mark, do you have any questions to those statements? So it sounded like labor force of 3 and 2.
So you have a 3-man crew. Are they mowing as well as detail? Is it a combined crew or are you mowing separately?
It's a combined 3.
So you've got 3 people mowing and doing the detail.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's the
Okay.
main question, Brian, is this on the size of the crew?
Great, okay.
And that's a full time, because the main count, I think, can be, it's more about the man hours, you know, it's every day of the week. So you can have a 10-man crew over a day, or 3 guys in 5 months for the entire team, for the 3 guys.
Full
So
time,
you
yeah.
have the 3-man crew here 5 days a week?
Yes, full work. Well, 4 10-hour days, but yes.
So-
yes.
So 3 men, full-time, 4 10s, mowing and detailing.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, all right, good stuff. And, yeah, please.
So, when we give it to before, have you taken into consideration of any of the gas price increases and like, labor force issues? Because I know there's a lot of landscaping individuals are having, companies are having a labor workforce issue. Over there.
Yeah,
You know, it's having-
We don't really see those problems much, being kind of more local, family of business. We have a really high retention rate with our employees. And we have a lot of guys who want to come work for us within the market, so we have not seen that issue as far as labor.
And also, if you have a guy in this, that's why we have to work 4 10 to make up those hours. So no matter what you're gonna get, your time to get to the job.
What about any cost increases because of additional impact? Like, are you going to stick to the same number even if the gas price increases? I mean, change
We
it?
won't be doing any fuel surcharges.
Okay.
Good question. Any questions for Dora, board? Please.
I'm looking at the palm trimming schedule D. Doing the palm trimming internally, or are you outsourcing it to a third party?
Maybe some sourcing it.
Yeah, we subcontract.
Is that, not to change gears, but since I'm asking this question, is that, how do you handle yours, Prince and Sons?
Everything's in there.
Internal, okay, and then Yellowstone palm trimming, you guys are outsourcing,
That's right.
correct? Okay. And we don't have Juniper represented at all?
Currently, not that I'm aware of. Juniper, if you are available, I would, ask you to chime in on the phone right now.
Question.
If we were to switch to Dora, you guys have a team in place and have staffing, I think you are interested in our team. But I believe the team.
Yep.
Go down and get to read that and talk to their town. I have the same kind of checks with staff and making sure everything is going properly in each way side, so. Yeah, we'll prepare.
Any additional questions for Dora? Yes.
Oh, but just a quick question to Yellowstone, I'm sorry. So, your price on the palm trim, since you are outsourcing as well, but you are more than double what Dora is. I'd like to know if there's a reason for that.
I would say mainly it's the requested requirements that change. So there was a scope change in some of the palm pruning, and I believe we modified it to account for that, which was a little bit different than the one that we currently did. I would like to point out the palm pruning we just did was less than the other subcontractor, so it's very competitive. And of course, we could take another look at the in-contracted palm agreement and make sure that, I'm assuming they would meet the scope as well.
So I'm not comparing what we used to do versus what we just did. I'm comparing, presumably the palm trimming, guidelines for Schedule D were identical between Dora and Yellowstone, and yet they came out at less than half the price that you did. I'm assuming that it's for the identical service. Is that correct?
Should be to the scope.
To the scope team.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference. That's a more than a $20,000 difference.
Yeah, they went in Schedule B though. They have a good Schedule B, rate there in terms of price.
One question. Go ahead. You know, can you let me know which services it goes for, except the farm trimming and
Everything and then alpha side, yeah.
Yeah, farm, okay.
And so
Let's look
currently
into
looking
this.
at
Good.
three sharp See,
Most
I
contractors
see
are
that.
paying much for labor.
Wait, Chris. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Okay, conversely, I'm looking at shrub tree care, tree shrub care schedule C. And that's exactly the opposite. So Dora, your, breakdown for that is almost double what the other proposals are for. So can you speak to that?
So the reason that is we learned by doing the eighth grade, took soil test out here and you guys have horrible soil, they have horrible, just everything.
You know that.
So we have we've got a special fertilizer called sulfur base. And so we just floated that into our proposal, do that with sulfur base.
Okay, so that probably speaks to the difference, but that's based on your experiences of already being on site and already having gone through this.
Yeah, and then we have also ICM treatments monthly, you know, need to be spoon fed out here, so we have
And the cypress palm or the cypress.
yeah, the OPC injections, we have this 3 times a year on all 19.
Okay. So to Prince and Sons and Yellowstone, did you account for any of those things that Dora just mentioned?
First, because things here have.
We're gonna let,
Everyone, just so you know, a lot of times in formal RFPs, we'll give each bidder the opportunity to present. And if the other bidders would like to leave the room, they're able to leave the room, so it doesn't become a giant debate. You'll remember we did this last summer.
I do, but my thinking, because I really want to be able, for me, for my presentation, it's a lot easier for me if I can have them each talk about the same exact issue, one to one to one.
It's up to the board and, you know, we can't require people to leave, so it's up to how you all want to do this. I just wanted to bring that up that we do normally do.
I know we can, but in this situation, I think it's important that we're able to compare between them to make sure about the differentiating factor.
Can we ask the vendor here today, do you have any issue with discussing the questions that she has together while all this is a group at the same time? Or like, is there any of you who would prefer having the privacy to address this?
Always step out and explain those.
Okay, well, we didn't talk about reviewing the proposals individually, so I didn't know if we were approaching it differently than we had in the past, so.
I defer.
No, yeah, so-
Brian,
yeah, I wanted Dora to answer some questions. Obviously, you had some additional. Now I'm gonna move on to Prince and Sons and then Yellowstone, just for like a short presentation. Yeah.
I personally would like to do it, as we've always done it, but we have everyone step out and do one at a time, this way here for the record.
Sure.
Clear, it keeps the arguments clear, and it really just helps with the process.
I
We
wanted
have a
to-
lot of information to review today, and it's gonna be quicker if we focus on one vendor at a time, give them the example change to explain, and we move on.
I'm with you. All right, so we've heard from Dora. No additional questions from Dora this time. Let's go to Prince and Sons.
Okay,
Unless there are additional questions from the board.
Correct, which is okay if you have additional questions.
okay. Now, I don't really have anything specific for them.
They're gonna come back.
Based on this, but yes, they're gonna
They're
go
gonna
through
come
their
back.
entire proposal,
Yeah.
and then I may have some.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so at this time, we would ask, we can't tell, but we would ask, Yellowstone and Dora to step out. We'll hear from Prince and Sons.
You're not required to.
Yes. It is going well.
You guys don't have to speak. This one, and so
Yeah, sure. You want us to wait for you?
I mean, you guys can
We're
start.
gonna start it, okay. All right. Brian's going to the restroom and then Supervisor Knight is grabbing a call.
I'm getting walking too, so we might as well take a 5-minute recess.
5-minute recess, all right. We'll be back, everybody.
Keep that one shirt moving.
What's that?
Everybody, we're coming back at 12:05 from recess.
Follow, they got follow, they follow, if you can't get that kind of.
All right.
When we're doing donuts.
Oh. All right, and at this time, we're gonna go ahead and open the floor up to Prince and Sons. Thank you for being here with us.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for your patience. I know that was just a lot.
You don't find that you guys can just, move up or hang up over here, everyone in the community can hear and see you guys.
And there's also probably people on the phone that you'll have to be close to this.
Good. You got a question for us?
We probably start just a presentation of who Prince and Sons is, where you're based out of, how you approach the bidding for this, how confident you feel about the property.
Okay, so, we've been around, since the late eighties, Prince and Sons actually changed names in 2015. So we are out of Haines City. I have office in Orlando. I have office in Tampa. We already do buildings on the back. So I had a team out here, probably seen it calling all over the place for about 3 weeks, making sure the numbers. I'm not a sales guy. I'm an operations guy. So if I'm coming up here, I gotta make it happen. And any question you got, you can throw at us. We have a really good team. I'm really good at communication. We're really good at all our customer service. I've never lost a property due to quality. And, anything for it?
Did you guys say you're in Millertown?
Yeah, I can go to,
Oh, okay, nice, so another, vendor, okay,
on a bidder, we got 6 guys for 2 days. And then there's another day back there. So we're out here 3 days a week already if we get this contract.
all right.
Next thing, we're on 12 months.
And you mentioned early on that you got to do all of your work in-house, that's something,
Only thing is out is animals.
okay?
And Knox Nursery is the best animal, to me, the best animal, they do have a nursery, they do animal schools.
Okay,
But everything else is in-house.
You have enough staffing?
We're cleaning staffing. We have, one of the good things, during storm season, so we, the other side of our business, that we have a dumpster coming in with new construction projects. We have 2,400 dumpsters, 14 gravel trucks. So when you clean up storm damage and stuff like that, that's a huge deal. We have you guys out. Yeah, go ahead, man.
I just have one comment. Village is the most beautiful of all of the areas of our community. You guys are doing a bang up job.
well, I appreciate it.
Really beautiful.
I actually work. I'm in charge of security in Solterra, where all the board liaisons have their own little thing that they do, Karen's the landscaper. So she's primarily landscaping, and we look at her for her guidance and stuff. But I did drive through those, yesterday, the grass was nice and green, well kept, everything did look good inside there.
St. Augustine, I've had a real problem with our St. Augustine throughout the community. And I know we have the same irrigation problems back there in Village Hall, leading up here, we're all running on one line, aren't we, right? One line?
Yes.
What
Yeah. And our current vendor complains, oh, it's the irrigation, it's the water pressure. And what it, the water pressure, it's Polk County. You guys are dealing with the same issues?
We all do.
Right, we all do. We've got issues with irrigation. We've got issues supposedly with, we do have chinch bugs all over the place, soil quality. You guys have the same dirt, same everything. Thank you for what you're doing back there. I'm proud.
Ian French brought me over about 7 years ago and had me redo the whole team. And I handpicked actually every person I have. So I know what everybody can do.
So.
Yeah, it's a family owned, it's not a corporate fund, we don't, people don't quit us and leave it away. I mean, Ian treats us really good, he pays 75% of insurance every week, he does a lot of it.
What type of work you gotta go off on the plans?
If we control irrigation,
If you guys do.
so I've hired every single irrigation tech, every single, account manager. I've hired everybody. I know what they can do. Most of them, I worked for a couple of other companies, they just follow me with me. I'm a retired Marine, so
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
thank you, you're gonna get done, I promise you.
Irrigation. Guys, if you go and bill us at the end of the month.
But yeah, so what I like to set up, say, we get this contract, say you give us $500 a month to bid on. or to the bill, without having to call and get approval all the time. That's all little stuff. Broken heads, little lateral lines, stuff like that. Anything that's main valves, clocks, rollers, stuff like that. We propose.
And because part that we received just the, broken sprinklers and stuff, the ratification at the end of the month, generally how we get it done, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, once you get a contract, then you have a meeting subject, iron all that out before you start. And you will get a monthly inspection and a detailed inspection before it tells you what's going on. I'm also the irrigation man. So, I have a really good field supervisor. I have 12 irrigation techs. 5 of them live within about 2 miles here. It's kind of funny. And we do, well, we do more cities, we do more hills. We're all around.
Are you part of the team that's gonna be on site? Are you part of the team that's gonna be on site?
I run all the operations, so I'll have an account manager that oversees it. He's gonna be the same person that oversees bills.
Okay,
So, but I'm in and out.
pleasure.
Question on your labor, I know that was a question that we asked, so with the submitted proposal, what is your labor plan in terms of
6 guys, 2 days.
6 guys, 2 days?
So mow it in detail. Third, why I'm saying.
Okay. Mark, you got any questions on that?
I just wanted to get that clarification. I thought that's what he said. 6 men, 2 days, and that's combination doing your mowing and detail, correct?
Yes.
And then you're self-performing all your services, including agronomics?
Everything except annuals.
Except the annuals. Who do you use for your flowers?
Knox.
Knox? Okay. Thank you.
So if we were to award you the contract, ideally from an operational standpoint, when would be the best start time for you?
30 days. Usually the best for operation, but
The 30 days, okay, and knowing that we have that contract with Sunscape for, landscape consulting, how do you feel about working with them, you know, that kind of a relationship?
I've worked with Mark before. He was very nice with different companies. They were actually 2 of them.
Okay, yeah, because I think he said he didn't have current experience
Yeah,
in
no.
printing clubs, but you do.
When I worked for 2 other companies that dealt with marketing and all.
Okay, perfect.
Love that.
That's, I think, all I have.
So when you say you're gonna self-perform wall, we're not gonna get any other quotes for like palm injection, I don't think we believe it.
We have everything.
So your price, and except for yellow bird.
I'm sure I don't have to.
We have 8 rooms, we have 3 departments.
Okay.
Yeah, just one pay for that
And
stream.
right now we get like separate bills for stuff and proposals and stuff, so I just wanna make sure everything's, palm injection, everything,
It's all for me.
running and all that.
That's all in your scope now, Bobby, with the
Okay.
Sunscape, program?
I honestly did not read the scope much.
No, that's okay, that's okay.
I rely on other board members when it comes to the landscaping. I don't know about landscaping.
No, that's okay.
It's pretty much on my mind trying to read all this.
No, it's a lot, it's a lot. But yeah, this new scope now encompasses everything that the property needs.
So we won't be getting separate quotes for arborist work like we had been doing
Y'all have an arborist.
every other
Correct.
day.
Correct. You now have that in your scope. So ideally, if it wasn't in the scope, you would, but now your prunings are in the scope. I believe Supervisor Nealon had a question?
Yeah.
Including the oak trees, I'm sorry, Sam. Or is the oak tree outside of the scope and?
That could be, shrub care. Mark, can you really quick touch on the hardwoods around the property? Is that part of scope now?
It's trying to.
No, Brian, hardwoods are not, well, partially, but because of their trimming cycle being maybe as short as 2.5 years, but normally 3 to 4 years, where they need to have canopy thinning, some structural work, dead wood removal. So because of that frequency, they're not. However, if the board approves the tree trimming to be done on that set frequency, then it becomes the contractor's responsibility within the scope to maintain clearances for pedestrians as well as roadways, things like 911, school buses, that becomes a real issue. So it is to maintain clearances so long as the board is authorizing the pruning of the trees to be done on a regular basis. And of course, thinning the trees in deadwood helps wind pass through them, prevents problems during tropical weather. And it also, Karen, to your point earlier, moss removal normally isn't part of the thinning, but they do demoss the trees. But anything over that 12-foot range really wouldn't be in the contractor's scope to do. However, they would assist with it, whatever they can reach. But it's we've had that occur. Starkey Ranch is really bad for moss, so it's kind of a combination of periodic trimming and the routine crew trying to keep the moss under control. And that's something that we'll continue to work with you on.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So to answer my question, if we had any tree work involving the hardwoods that was not inside of the scope of service, your team would be able to perform it versus having to bring in a third party?
Yeah, there's no third party.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
And we touched on the moss, anything we can reach with a rake with moss will be coming down when we're doing detail. It won't be the same.
Don't hire a service.
As detail work.
Love that.
Okay.
So we're gonna save money on outsourcing a lot of things.
It's not like some thing with the angle.
Right,
You got the number on the angle, but it is.
right, exactly. But what I'm saying is that, well, like the moss, whereas with the other vendors, if it goes above 12 feet, we're gonna have to hire it out, whereas you guys, that's gonna be a separate charge, and then you guys are.
It's still in the houses.
Perfect, thank you.
Supervisor Milam, anything else?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for your service.
Yes, sir. You want to get it. One thing, can I say one thing before you leave? Don't forget what I said about storm season. You had storms, you got all the damage, especially with all the trees you get out here. When you have that, we'd be on site and see the storm things. We can use your labor that we use for maintenance, for work this on clean. To swap hours per hour, it'll save you a whole lot of money. Because you had to clean the anyway before you mow.
And that's my biggest issue with current vendor, is that everything just seems to be, when they get around to it, when it happens, and in the meanwhile, we're just,
My other one,
it's slow.
We can't do that, and we need to get somebody in here.
Right, exactly, the fact that you're vertically integrated, that you're doing pretty much everything except for the annuals, that's wonderful, because like you're our slave.
my God, oh my God, the future. They're expecting to turn calls that day or early next morning, pretty much any time.
I really like that. The other thing is that I want to make sure, I know that Bill Cal, it's just knocked it out of the park with it. Is there anything different qualitatively or quantitatively or budget wise, on the same basis, on a ratio basis that you reported to us that you do different for them? So the same service, the same look, do you feel like you can bring us up to that look?
Yes, but you gotta be like the military, they spend quite a bit of money upgrading old landscaping shrubs and take them out and put in new stuff. We put in, I don't know, how many hundreds of yards of rock out there, make the place look good. So, or whatever you like.
Right, but my question is,
Yeah,
is
you get
that,
the same exact.
but do you feel like you could bring us up to that level without any extraordinary expensive, anything additional than what is in this quote? Or are we gonna have to then make further investments into new material, new everything in order to make that happen?
My biggest concern is perfect. It looks rough. We get some services on it, see how we get it turned around before we can make any decisions. And we had turned something around. Look just as bad.
And so you've done that before, so based on what you've seen and the scope of the issues that we have, what do you estimate the extraordinary cost above and beyond your quote to be to do that?
I didn't give you a fair.
Could you give us a ballpark on it? Like, are we talking 100,000 or are we talking 500,000?
It wouldn't be really worth it.
Yeah.
I hate to give you something and tell you, then later on, you give some numbers, you'll be surprised.
Question for you. This is for you. How do you feel about bamboo?
I had some in my house
There it is.
Yeah, another question.
Okay.
Are the spots still palms back there? Around some of the houses,
Come back.
the ones that have the bushy fronds, what are they called?
Which one, which house is talking about? I seen,
They're Villatail.
oh, yeah, you got foxtails and then you got some queens. You got everything.
No, the foxwoods are so pretty.
Yeah, they are. They're cold and not.
You don't like them?
You know, they don't like.
They don't do good.
No,
They're like.
No, but you go to Four Seasons, they're replacing 265 of them.
Oh, okay.
Question, all right. So a lot of our boxwoods, all of our boxwoods, we've done, I can't see, replacing those with more boxwoods. They're really pretty and everything else, but we don't know what's going to happen with our weather. So I'm wondering, we're kind of leaning more towards, fragrant, useful plants that are both, heat, that are hardy, cold, hot, humid, dry, whatever, right? I did realize, because I've got things like, I've got a lot of jasmine. Did extremely well. I think the cold actually helped them. Camellias, right, camellias are great. And I was wondering, like, the boxwoods, how would you feel about using, rosemary instead?
I'm not big on them. One thing you got really going good for you is you got Mark. Nobody knows plants better than you.
Like that, yeah, you know, it's true, it's true.
Better than he does.
So that would be a question for me.
So then basically you're gonna defer to everything together. That's, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, help.
That's just answered one.
Everybody's got different opinions and different experiences, but he's one that's been around, been doing it for a long time.
Yeah. Real quick, I think Supervisor Nealon had some closing questions.
Yeah, so basically, like, before you give the quote, look at the scope of the work, like, I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
We don't get housing.
yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Every pond.
yeah. That's good. So I mean, like, the code that we came up with, so, like, how do you see any anticipation of going up and down? Any knowledge of line?
We know what it is. So we have a system, we know how many man hours it takes to do it, after we get to the square footage, all we heard. But in our system, we tell us how long it will take to do it. And it never fails.
Do you anticipate any surprises?
No.
Because, yeah,
In terms of price escalation.
yeah. Scope
No,
of the work.
if Lucas has set it over, there's nothing gonna change, we're not gonna get you any gas prices. What's in that proposal is gonna stay that way until renewal time.
Supervisor Nealon, the only thing that we'll have is the new plants. So, you know, up and down the boulevard, we might have to do some sign replacement, we might have to do some viburnum replacement. Those will be additional costs.
Right.
Well, this cost our time, if there were any type of, plan that was bid on, and I think it was the second part of the key form, not like the chart thing, but there's a list of a bunch of different items. They'll be tied to the prices that are in there if it's covered. If it's not an item that's in there, if sod wasn't bid on specifically by how everybody yards of sod, that will be a price that can fluctuate, but a lot of your plant material is already bid on price wise.
Good. Thanks.
Any,
Yeah, yeah.
So my point, the point that I want to make is that, we're comparing apples to apples, and this is basically your services and the qualitative nature of the work that we do, the consideration, the timeliness, and the overall look of the property. Our soil conditions are our soil conditions. Our turf and, grass or whatever, no matter who it is that is bidding on this, they're all gonna have to, you're gonna still have to pay for soil refurbishment, for the actual plant matter and everything else. So, if we want it to look like Village Hall, which is what we ideally want, no matter who is bidding on this, we're gonna have to pay for those things. And if they're not included in this bid, this bid is for services, for labor, am I correct in that?
That's
for the most part.
What you meant.
not reparations, not requesting turf and all of that kind of stuff. So it's an apples to apples thing. I think this is more of a, we're looking at the numbers, of course, and we're looking at the quality of service, the timeliness, and,
Yep. And
and our faith and confidence in doing the job with that. So I just wanted to keep that.
So one final question, this is more technical. You said in the code, as per the requirement, the equipment list or insurance, some of the aspects are missing from the submission, right? So is it oversight or just you guys usually don't include those things like?
Speak on, it. Just based on, I've worked with Prince before, at quite a few of my districts actually. Based on the services I've seen in contracting and proposals I've seen in other places, I don't have any concerns of this stuff that is not included, because I've either seen it before somewhere else, or I've seen the services provided, so I don't have major concerns about the items that are missing, but if you guys want to find it,
Lucas put it together, I don't know if he misses one, I know absolutely huge.
Yeah.
We can get you anything missing for us. I mean, we do a lot of work and never, ever been signed for situations. The young man that owns this place, that's a gift.
that's all.
And realistically, if you guys are selected, how fast do we, they turn around the community to, stuff as part of.
Well, I'm sorry, get
The detailing of it, the grass, how long do you make it?
you say grass, but it's like I tell them, like, we can start treating it. It takes a while to get St. Augustine back to where you think it should be. Or looking like built, doesn't it? It probably take a year, when we get the weeds out, when you got remember, then you're gonna start having like
6 months to a
you
year.
get all those weeds out. But at that point, you determine, hey, do I want to place, start putting down new sod in the bare spots? Or do you want to wait time and let the St. Augustine fill in, because you know, St. Augustine drove like this, and it feels good, but actually.
Bobby, just for that, our plan right now with the Sunscape team is to get our property looking great by this time next year.
Okay.
Because through the summer cycle, they're just gonna be maintaining, because things are growing so rapidly. So we really will start to make a difference in the fall cycle going into winter.
What do you think your biggest challenge inside of Solterra is? As far as all the projects we have going on, game,
I don't see anything that's a big challenge, it's just, basic routine.
Okay.
Just know we got some big ideas.
They do have some big ideas.
You may have to, you can't, it's up to you.
Board, be respectful of the other vendors. Any other questions to Prince and Sims?
Thank you.
All right, let's get
Thank
the
you.
next. Thank you. Are we okay with rolling right into the next one? Okay.
You guys are welcome up, you know, there, whatever you guys want.
I'm going,
Bring it, Laura.
you wanna bring it yours? Okay.
Yeah, we're keep moving.
Thank Yellowstone for lunch.
All right, let's go.
We're good. All right.
I think we finished with that, right? No?
Dora wants a formal setting. Yeah. So, Dora, same layout. We gave, Prince and Sons an opportunity to just go over, how confident you feel about the property, your experiences, and anything else that the board should know in considering the services.
Yeah, so just a couple things you want to know. I know it was mentioned just with some concerns, maybe with the price being a little more competitive in the scope. But like we said, we're very confident in the scope that, we'll be able to meet those requirements. We are able to be a little more competitive with the fact that we have a full-time team here. We can add those guys and the equipment to that same crew to be able to service the property. And we do look at this as one of our properties. We use it as a reference for all our properties, when we're out there bidding on other projects, so we take that into consideration. We recommend you guys, if you haven't, to call our references, we give you a list of every property we have, you could call all of them for a reference, and they'll all give you a positive reference for us.
We're very familiar working in this type of atmosphere. We do, Disney, Animal Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, Rivers Work, all of that, those type of properties. So we're used to working around guests in these settings. We have no issues with that. Just really wanted to clarify some of those things for you guys.
No, thank you.
You have seen like maybe efficiencies because you guys are always there, right? But what are the key areas that you really focus on improving? Because, board member is very acutely familiar with the plans and how landscapes, which you might have a lot of questions, but, we have just figured a little bit before, but what deficiencies that you see, that needs a definite improvement?
So I would say agronomics, and you mentioned us how our scope was a little more expensive on that. So we look at, the scope is the minimum that we're going to do. If we can exceed what's in the scope, so we included additional fertilizer treatment things out here that to make sure that, to get those things up to that higher standard. We see a lot of issues with the agronomics out here, just being out on site with like turf conditions and whatnot. That would be, I would say, the number one thing that needs to be improved.
So does your quote is double the price, does that include the soil for the soil improvement?
Not soil, no, but it includes like our Kim and Fir program. It's a pretty robust program service in order to like improve the quality of your turf and just overall shrubs.
I would only say for the most part, what turf.
What's that?
Our turf is pretty much gone.
Yeah,
So to me, a lot of it is gonna be applied first, soil improvement with the turf, with new turf going over it. So we're looking at the price difference in that particular area. And I'm wondering how come you're charging $10,000 more, double what the others are quoting, except for Juniper, but it's pretty much they're not here. So, pretty much double. So I'm wondering what the difference is. Is it, I figured maybe material.
yeah, I can't really speak to maybe what they're including, but maybe a higher quality product agreement. But I'm not entirely sure what they have as far as what material they're buying, but I can tell some just
What material are you talking about?
for can fall for it.
Chemical.
Yeah.
That's a big price.
You did have a specific fertilizer for the community at Solterra base, so just because there's no turf there, we're still gonna fertilize the ground, so you're gonna see that percolating in the soil and remediate the soil as a result. That's why we're using the Solterra based soil, because you have such, I can't remember off the top of my head, the soil table, you have a very high pH level, and we're trying to bring that back down to where it's unsafe. So that kind of works in conjunction with it. And then we also have soil softener built in, so it kind of softens the soil as well, and allows the percolation up your good stuff.
So your plan is that you're gonna be, fertilizing even the sand, hoping to turn the sand so that when eventually we.
Designated turf areas. It's the room, this is a turf area, yes. Well, we're not gonna stop, it's just the green areas, but we'll hit the whole section.
Right, but that section off between, Terrace and Esta, the townhomes there, there's a big field there. Between there and Solterra Boulevard, you're talking about a section like that, where the kids are out there playing football and cheerleading practice and all of that. We do have plans for that, or at least I have plans for that. Probably other people on this. You probably have a vision for what they'd like to see there, instead of the big stand pit that it is. So we're talking about fertilizing that as well to prepare the soil for what we might eventually do.
No, so that's in Bahia. So you can speak.
I believe the scope for the Bahia is you have 2 micronutrient blend fertilizers a year. Since it's a Bahia area, it's typically not on the same agronomics that those are St. Augustine areas.
Yes, about their inside.
Karen, so let me jump in real quick. So one of the questions that we just made to Prince was, obviously everybody bidded on the scope, which the scope includes the fertilization and the granular. We're in a position because Sunscapes are experts, we're looking for them to dictate how this is. So I'd love to chime Mark in, because I know you stated that you kind of have your own FERC program. But I want to make sure that it's aligned with the scope that Sunscape set for us. And obviously, if you have any knowledge of the current property, I think we're open to that. But, Mark, can you work with us here? We're looking at the turf care schedule. We're reviewing the pricing. It's a little bit higher than two of the other vendors. And it sounds like, Dora kind of bid on their for recommendation versus what the RFP called for. Can you comment on this?
I sure can. I mean, the frequency of fertilizations, the specific requirements for granular fertilizations, the specific requirement for custom blended product is all in the scope. The only thing that can be considered outside of scope is high soil pH, and that's why we require soil testing, normally late summer, fall, but under a new startup, it would be done immediately. And, if pHs exceed, high sevens, low eights, the only way to adjust it is with sulfur. And so at that point, we don't know now, but going into it, if that was the case, then, we would purchase a supplemental sulfur application prior to fertilization because it would bring the pH down low enough. If not, with high pH, there's a lockup effect. So the plants and turf aren't feeding. So you bring it down with sulfur and then it allows it to feed. If that's a one-time thing, it's on occasion, it's not. We would eventually build it into the program, either with sulfur coated product, depending on the deficit, or add sulfur in preceding all fertilizations, and then probably bring the timing of ornamental and turf fertilizations together so they could appreciate that window of reduction of the pH. But other than the absence of sulfur, because we don't know the soil pH right now, all the custom blended product and the requirements are currently in the scope.
Gotcha.
So
Yes.
I'd like to add, Mark, we've had Dora for HOA landscaping for about a year and a half now, and there are certain parts of the community that have been sodded and resodded, and there's been a huge recurring problem with no plant life being sustainable. And so Dora is coming into this with prior experience of doing soil testing throughout the community to ensure that the $250,000 of sod that was just put down within the last 6 months would endure. So I think that some of the things that they're talking about are based on their experience of already being in the resort, which would account for some of that pricing being a little bit higher.
Well, is the
That
job
might-
in the sod in the neighborhoods completely done?
That's like you said.
Because my section of Oak Moss Loop is not done. Nothing in that
You're
loop.
not on the HOA side?
Yeah,
No, we're not doing the sod thing.
oh, okay, because if that refurbishment program
No,
is
I think
complete.
they're speaking more because we have a Solterra, if I'm correct me or wrong, we have a Solterra specific blend that they created based off of ground soil testing. And that would have been used in the lead up to the sod project to amend the soils to try to get them to the appropriate levels. But we've gone through phase 1 of the sod projects. We still have 2 and 3.
Yeah, and so, I mean, ultimately, they already have some information that the other vendors are not gonna have based on their, prior longevity here in sorting out some of the HOA landscaping issues. So, I mean, they just, I feel like came prepared with that information to go ahead and put it out there instead of, coming in probably with the minimum and then having to come back and say, well, you have a soil pH problem, we have to do this now.
Yeah, they already have that, and that's what I figured. So it explains the variance. Hey, this is already from experience. This is what
Yes.
we need. And then we would go cross-reference back and forth to
Okay.
Mark and make his recommendation.
Might not even have that experience because he hasn't been involved in the resort from a
Correct.
HOA perspective and have that prior relationship with the HOA and Dora in terms of, we've already done all of this.
We just haven't done soil samples yet. Yeah, on the CDD. Yeah.
And so the CDD property isn't gonna be any different in than the HOA.
Sure.
Property in terms of the soil and what lays below that is out of any of our hands.
No, it's, and that answers the discrepancy on the fertilization.
So I thought I would add that because he might not be aware and some of the other board members there might not be aware either.
No,
But Brian, I would suggest that,
one
the only
second.
thing,
Yeah, I know you guys got lost on the west side, after we've been down in the side street.
Yeah, I'm gonna come right back to you.
And it's doing all the most. And then with the freeze. Is there a little price, that's something you replaced or that?
Yeah, so that was just, we installed St. Augustine, but we also top dress, we, put down a base layer of command soils underneath all the sod, and that's why it's still so much like your house. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, you're not just putting sod down,
Yeah, so you know, yeah, a lot more involved, but yeah.
so.
Mark, coming back to you, you had some questions?
I was just going to say the only thing that could be missing from the scope when it comes down to fertilization is sulfur applications. And, without having the exact square footage, but it's probably a $3,000 or $4,000 amendment that would adjust soil pH. Any of the absence in nutrients would be taken care of with the custom blending and the fertilization. But I think something Dora just mentioned is, with new sod going down, command soil, mixed in, it's like a 1-inch layer tilled to 3 inches. It has proven to be for moisture retention and nutrient buildup a great addition, an amendment to anything, to plant material, and especially new turf. But outside of that, and that would be done with sod installation, turf installation, not with maintenance. So again, the custom blending requirement in the scope requires to take the soil testing and blend it in with whoever they're getting their fertilizer, like people like Harold's custom blend fertilizer all the time, to the nutrient base that's detected through soil testing. The only other thing, turf will go down in root. It might not be healthy, but the only thing that would really prevent turf from ever rooting in my experience, is a pathogen like take-all root rot that you could pick up through a special test. But other than that, it's just you're overcoming weaknesses in the soil, not turf just totally failing or not wanting to root in. But things like command soil could certainly help new turf get established. But it's really after the fact, as the turf is starting to mature, potash, keeping fungus off of it in the event you're putting it down in summer. And I know you're talking about fall, winter, which is ideal. But I still don't think that the absence of sulfur, justifies, a 20-some $1,000 difference in cost, is my opinion.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we could send the numbers if you need to see the breakouts based on square footages, the reality square footages of everything to help justifying those numbers if you need to see it, that's no problem.
No, thank you for that. Any other questions? Good.
I just want to ask some of the same questions I asked the other is, if we awarded the contract, when would be an ideal transition time for you?
I mean, we could start within 30 days. The award, I mean, ideally, a lot of times people transition at the end of the summer and in the winter time, so we can start as early as 30 days from that.
Okay.
This would be no problem.
Yeah.
Yes, Supervisor.
And so my next question is there any of this scope of this practice outlined on here that would go out to a third party vendor?
Just the tree trim.
The trees, okay.
We do disable palms in the house.
Yeah, 500 is disabled, we figured we got.
Okay, so what trees are we?
Like your like take palms, we would.
Okay, so some palms and hardwoods,
Yeah.
okay.
The hardwoods, we would do in-house, keep them up to 15 feet on road.
Lit.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, how do you feel about working with Sunscape as our landscaping consultant in terms of partnering with them and?
Yeah, it's always good to have an extra set of eyes out in the field and holding people accountable. No issues working with Mark and the team and, our experience in doing those monthly walks and just making sure that, everything gets addressed and taken care of.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
My question is, not so long in the past, we voted on a vendor that came in, and they happened to be the lowest price vendor, within 30 days, we had to have another meeting where they were like, well, there's some surprise expenses that was, and so we definitely egg on our face, they went from there. Are there any expenses that would be unforeseen that you would see happen in addition to what you've had here? I don't want to repeat that again.
No, we've been in business 50 years. We're very comfortable with that. We do not have
we're the owners, I'm running the company, we're brothers here, we run the company, so there is no formal structure, no corporate agreement that we have to sign this permission for, so, you have a contract, us, we take care of our customers, so. Like I mentioned, we'd be happy to give you a list of every single one of our properties, and you could call every single one of them, and they would cite the whole service that we offer. So we have no concerns with the numbers.
I spoke with the one person that probably would sway my influence the most, which is Chris Hanks, who absolutely loves you guys from the moment we worked together, that he just raves about the work that you've done and how much of a pleasure it has been to be like, we are getting the things done right. And that, I think that speaks a lot. Because we really want to make the community amazing. We want rentals to go up. We want people to say, wow, we're a beautiful place. And I think we're looking for partners that can help make that happen. You guys come with a fantastic background so far.
Yeah.
Do you like the idea of being able to take over both the HOA and the CDD to be able to, economies of scale?
Yeah, absolutely. It just benefits, I think, both sides of it, like you said earlier, obviously you can't just rob Peter to pay Paul. We have to understand it's two separate contracts, but there is some additional oversight on the property. We do have management out here full time. We do have additional irrigation techs out here full time. So when the rain, something that happens after hours, we can be on site within a matter of minutes and not have to dispatch from other communities. And same with my work orders, the manager is here to handle this immediately. So we do feel it's a benefit. Yeah.
I think from a mowing perspective, it'll be a little bit more efficient because we see like behind my house, like the same 10 or 20 feet getting mowed by the CDD one day and the HOA.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have a lot of big plans here, this needs work out here, so, together with Sunscape and Karen as landscape and me as amenities, if we enlarge this relationship, we, definitely need to work on some things out here as well, so.
Our schedule. I mean, that's one thing that's really important to us is being sensitive to the schedule that we have, the seasonality of our guests. It's critical to us, which is why I really took umbrage earlier at, waiting until literally the busiest 3 days of check-in of our entire year to do something that they've had awareness of for the entire month. And they know us. They have been here since the developer was first here. They know what our game is. And that was very upsetting.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, let's hurry up and get it done because the board meeting is on Friday. So Wednesday, boom.
On the sorts of money, we totally understand those timeframes.
I do appreciate when I see your teams out in the community, they're, parked on the side of the road and not in the grass, and you've got the safety cones out, as,
It's very important.
and I appreciate that, and I don't see, CDD landscaping operating in the same methodology on being driving through the grass. Yeah.
Got a quick question for you guys.
And suggestions also, like you see the moth growing or something happening that needs to be handled. It would be great if you came to us. Well, I guess we have more, right?
Yeah.
So, but we'd like not to have to, we'd like proactive, not to have to, for you guys to be reactive.
Yeah.
So,
You guys manage the Disney properties?
We do, yes. I mean, not every single one of them, but we have.
well, animal
Yeah,
kingdom.
we've been out there since day one with them, so, we're working with them for a while.
That's very impressive.
You must have had some challenges with winter.
Yes, oh, yeah, it's been a couple of cutbacks last week, yeah, just a lot of, just gonna be looking, all kinds of stuff.
We got pretty lucky. I think a lot of our plants are coming back, a lot of them more than half is off. It's just those boxwoods and bougainvillea.
It's over.
One of my favorite things, and now it's done. We can't use them anymore.
How do you feel about being moved?
We deal with it a lot, we have no issues with it. But.
She understands my sensitivities. The bamboo, I was kind of, white knuckling through this winter freeze because I was like, oh my gosh, how's the bamboo gonna do? Fabulous.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. The ride.
yeah,
And it's such a perfect privacy maker and it's quiet.
yeah.
Thing, and then just sort of just a lot of bamboo.
Yeah. You just don't wanna let it get away from you. If you maintain it, it's great. If you let it get away from you, it can be hard to drive back in.
Right, and that's the proactive part that I'm talking about.
For sure.
All right.
Any other questions?
60 to 70 grand more with another company. That pretty much is based on the fact that you guys are already here and you do the HOA also, and you gotta kind of combine resources and cut down labor a little bit more. That's a portion of it. Like we said, we want to be competitive as well, just because we do look at it as a premier property that we can be proud of and put our name on it. And, you know, a lot of the competition, we are a local family-owned business. We do not have, you know, corporate investment groups that a lot of our competition does, so we don't have the answer to that either, so I don't we need to. And you do the majority of services in-house? Everything's in-house except for like, tall palm trees. Okay, yeah, how tall would that be? It's been like 20 feet. 20 feet. Okay. We would subcontract out. We all ourselves. Yeah.
Questions?
I didn't get your names. Michael and Matthew. Michael, Matthew, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks for saying.
Yeah, thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Stick around because we're not done. I'm gonna go grab the other team.
You guys are set up. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can't walk you through. Why did I get a lot? But, you know, we're not very nice now. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get it. Yes.
Awesome. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Wait,
I don't know yet. I know Vicky, kind of get in. Gary. They go. Sorry for the long wait. It's just a process. As you know, we try and thoroughly get to know everything, so we appreciate you getting that application.
Yes, yes. So same format, we are giving our vendors the opportunity to present and basically give us, an idea of how you put this bid together, how confident you feel taking on the property, on the new scope, and getting us into tip-top shape.
Do the scope part of it.
Yeah, so, actually, my name's Nicole, I'm one of the business development managers, for the United States, I've worked with me for 10 years. So, you may know, we've been on this property for almost 10 years, so, we're very familiar with property boundaries, obviously. Vicky's been the account manager on the site for the past couple of years, Jeremy we brought on recently, but we've had a lot of tenure here with our current crew, and staff here. We put together a proposal. We wanted to make sure that we bid according to the scope that Sunface has put together. It's changed a little bit from our previous years working on the property. We feel like it's in a good way. I'm sure you guys heard. Typically, we were doing 4-week rotations on our current scope of work, but we want to make sure that Mark's 3-week detail rotations were accommodated to do that. So we've upped our staffing to provide that service. You guys want me to talk about hours now?
Yeah, I would love your labor breakdown. That's been a repetitive
Yeah.
question. So what do we plan in terms of labor?
Yeah.
So I'll take this. So, coming in, obviously, the branch manager, there's a lot of different things that we've done, with our branch, positive things. With this specific property, we're looking at 2, 5-man crews, 2 days. And then in addition to that, we have your outside perimeter, which would be another crew as needed. That is not a monthly, it's 17 times. Yeah, it's about 17 is how we have it set up with your current contract. 5 guys are basically doing the mowing, and then the other 5 would be doing specific to detail, spraying the weeds, trimming the property for each one.
And this is on average about 1 additional crew member than what we're currently doing here on the site. So, you guys work.
Yeah, so the only reason for the increase, just so you know, is the scope change. That is really the only reason. We haven't increased, I believe, your property in quite some time, and that's again, because we value the relationship. We're very close to our office, like 15 minutes away. And I have worked with Mark before, so some of it also has to do with the expectation. You know, we want to make sure that we're, have all the fertilizations, irrigation contingencies. We also do something different than maybe some of the other companies do. One of them is called Topigo. It's a brand new investment that we spent a lot of money on to make everything on your property a lot more easy and efficient when it comes to doing your irrigation inspection. So it's basically a program where we go through and we record all the areas around your property, the cost, and then when the irrigation tech is on site, then he has a tablet that he goes through and marks off if there's a broken head, bad zone, clock that needs to be replaced, and it gives you a very detailed report. And we found that this has benefited both the properties, so you know that we're being accurate when we're delivering these reports. And then also on our side to make sure that if we find something that's consistently an issue, like cars running over a head, we're able to determine that by using this application, which thus saves you quite a bit of money. Because then we can have a discussion with the homeowner or figure out the reason behind the things that's involved. Okay.
Well, just to clarify that, that sounds all great, but the irrigation for the homes is not CDD. That's HOA.
Right.
So somebody's driving,
Well, I mean, like around the corner to your clubhouse, that we may be able to find one that's completely being broken and we can use it back. Okay, but yeah, not necessarily a home.
so, you said 2 hygiene teams, 2 days a week, plus 1 extra, or that includes 1 extra?
That includes a crew coming to just be the bridge. So typically,
Then we would be on site.
2 to 3 days a week.
Okay, so I know we've changed the scope of the practice, so based on the new scope, what are we gonna be outsourcing to third-party vendors?
But the only thing that we will be, sourcing out would be the palm printing and the mold installation, which are 2 services currently we do not do.
Okay, so basically, the rework is still gonna be outsourced, right? Because you don't have an arborist, if I remember correctly. For the solitary.
Correct. We do have a certified arborist that we work with now that can give you directive on if there's a dead palm and information
But
behind
in
that.
terms of any kind of tree pruning, we can do the, I can't remember if it's up to 12 feet or 50 feet. That's essentially something like that. Okay, because you don't have that, correct? Correct. Okay. So I know that we brought in Sunscape recently, and I know that there's been a little bit of concern that maybe some of the recommendations that they have made might not have been done in a timely manner. And I know one of the issues that one of the board members had brought up is that, last month we talked about the whole pulling the moss off the trees, and then maybe it wasn't done timely because it only got done like 2 days ago, which was basically a month ago. How do you feel about what's on the date, and how are we going to ensure that the recommendations that they're bringing to us and to you are going to be done in a timely manner?
So that's a great question. So 2 things I want to make sure the board is aware of is they did choose a separate vendor for the oak tree project. Typically, in most CDD accounts, the moss removal is not included in the contract because there's 2 reasons. One, it's typically above 8 to 10 foot, which is what we're lifting. And the other reason is because it's very time consuming without actually trimming the oak tree. So